Man, the fact that it's the end of the year, someone told me, hey, it's nearly New Year's while I was out on a holiday trip. And I genuinely thought for a second, have you drugged me? Because that's insane. It does not even begin to feel like the end of the year, doesn't it?
Not really. I mean, for later parts of the show, not to, I am in no way jumping ahead at all, but I was looking through some of the things that we covered on the podcast earlier in the year, and they really feel like last year.
Right.
Like this year did not zoom by for me in
No.
a weird way. It did in some respects, because I'll look at things that I watched in the theater and I'm like, oh my god, that was like 10 months ago. It felt like 3 months ago. But then there's other things, like for the podcast, it's like I could have swore that was a 2023 episode, but I guess that's not the case.
Yeah. Like, because my head's kind of been in the space of this year has gone on for so long that it feels like it should keep going. Because, like, you know, whenever you're in the middle of like some really mundane task and you realize you come to the end of it, you're like, oh, I actually got it done. That's kind of what it feels like, where it somehow doesn't feel like this is the end of it, and yet it feels like it's been 3 times longer than any other year in my life.
Yeah, I agree. I
couldn't even necessarily.
I have no other thoughts on that matter. It's wild how time works.
Yeah, and I've gotten a general consensus that there's a lot of that around in general. And I'm sure there's any number of reasons. I will try to avoid any of the greater socioeconomic or political reasonings behind those, for as much as some things that happen in my life were slightly affected by them. But I couldn't even tell you specifically why in my life it felt that way, because I actually got quite a bit done this year, which was surprising whenever I actually sat back and took stock.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah. I got engaged. I got a new job. I hung out with more people. I feel like I have an actual life now. And yet, I'm still kind of coming into the end of this year with a sort of feeling of, You know what I mean?
I mean, not in particular. I mean, I think I know what you mean. I just don't think that I'm impacted in the same way as you are.
Fair.
I've chilled a little bit as the years have progressed, and I've gotten more and more into the meh side of things. Like, it's fine, you know, I'm not really bothered by... I mean, things happen that are out of your control, things happen that you aren't pleased with, or that you... this really sucks, but the more and more it's like, yeah, it's just trudging on, and all I can do is be better moving forward.
Fair.
So
that's fair. I'm sorry if there have been any truly negative parts to your life this year. I'm sorry if I haven't checked in enough. That's not the right wording.
Nothing truly immense or anything. I mean, if something had, you would probably... I'm sure you would know. So,
Fair.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the benefit of these end of the year chats. We kind of get to finally take stock of those, because as nice as it is to do for the show specifically, which we will be getting to, I assure you, our listening public, it's also nice to kind of do that just like on a personal level of being able to recognize, yeah, no, that's actually what I did this year and why that was a good or bad thing. Not the least of which were movies.
Yeah, we're always doing that, aren't we?
We're always doing that. I mean, that's why we're here, for God's sake. This is a pretty good year as far as not for film releases. I will say actually this year was actually pretty lame as far as movies were coming out, you know, with a few notable exceptions. But at least for me, and probably by extension you, been doing quite a bit. I mean, this is the year we started doing our movie nights between you, me, Steph, and Hannah. I believe, you know, I've been able to show Hannah more and more movies off of our extensive list of films we need to see. And
hell yeah, you just got to start bringing more of those to movie nights, just in general.
I do.
I've looked through the list that you made on Letterboxd, which I'm sure is out of date by this point. But
absolutely.
I've looked at it, and there's maybe a third of them I haven't seen. Oh,
cool.
So
yeah, that is the biggest drawback for me. Is like, I want to do this, but I'm sure it's either I know I've seen it, or presumably Steph and or Jake has also seen it, and so it just feels like you'd be a weird one to suggest.
Nah, I'm not the type of person that rewatches stuff on my own, but in a group setting, I don't care. It's perfectly fine for me. And fair. Stephanie, she watches the same things over and over again all the time. So.
What am I talking about? I don't know how many times she's watched Criminal Minds alone. So yeah, films shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. That should not be a problem then. So yeah, it's just me being lazy then. So I need to I need to get on that for scheduling our next one. I'll probably put up a poll for perhaps next Saturday or the Saturday after.
Ooh, if you do it for this Saturday, do it soon because I'm already thinking about, oh, what should our first one of the year be?
Oh, I'll let you have that honor then. I don't want that kind of pressure. I'll do the second weekend.
Oh yeah, so I get the pressure. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Listen, you rarely pick bad things, and even when you do pick the things that turn out to be quote unquote bad, they're hilarious. So
That's good. Reputation better than nothing.
right.
So.
Oh man.
But I guess as we continue to move forward with this little chat, I think what we usually go into is a bit of a retrospective of the podcast for 2024. This tends to take a number of different shapes over the years. I tend to label it as best and worst of the podcast, but we talk about a number of different things. Most surprising, best original versus best remake. So just retrospective podcast retrospective.
Fair. Makes sense. We don't have to be too, formulaic of it, because God knows us sticking to a formula has never really been our strong suit. So we like a good waffle, we like a good tangent. So it's always nice to just kind of go as the crow flies with our what could best be called our train of thought, but is more akin to near senile ramblings, honestly. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. So I guess any immediate thoughts, sort of looking at our coverage here. There's a rare instance in that we're filming the end of year chat so close to New Year's that all of our actual 2024 episodes have gone live.
Yes.
I think usually the last one has not gone live yet. So we're like, we need to remember that we covered the Little Mermaid, and that episode just hasn't launched yet.
Immediate thoughts? I think I've let it percolate in my brain long enough for me to still stand by what I felt, and I keep seeing more and more people be nostalgic for it. The Hobbit trilogy isn't good. It's like, I refuse to be gaslit by the people who keep saying, "Oh, it's so much better than I remember." It's like, y'all are just comparing it to the Rings of Power TV series, and that TV series sucks. The Hobbit trilogy was bad. That's truly the biggest takeaway I've had from this year. Is whenever I think back on it, I was like, I should have been harsher. I should have been harsher on that trilogy. It's real. I just actually don't care for it hardly at all.
I don't loathe it in any way as you seem to.
I don't
it
even loathe
sort of.
Even loathe is kind of strong, but it's close.
I mean, I have been seeing a lot of that go back as well, and I treat it as kind of akin to the reappraisal of the prequels for Star Wars, which are also bad. But
yes,
I've been seeing more and more of that recently from The Hobbit. It's funny you mentioned, like, in talking spaces online, places like Letterboxd, like people that I respect going back and watching them and being like, you know what, Peter Jackson, I'm sorry. And I'm like, I don't know. We just
I'm not
those in April, and I'm still not a huge fan. I do stand by what I said in that I think the first movie is an actual good movie with some unfortunate CGI elements, but that series did not need to be a series. It just drags on.
Right.
Really interesting opening, and I don't know. Just I do like the first film. I'll stand by that.
That's fair. It's definitely the best of the three, and I like what they do with Smaug and everything, just because that's my favorite part of the story. But I guess to compare it to, like you said with the prequels thing, I defend the prequels one simply for the fact of they are objectively bad movies. However, when you see them when you're a kid, they're fun. I do think they are good movies for seeing as a kid because, like, yeah, they're space fantasy films. It's meant to be melodramatic tripe. Like, it doesn't have to be anything more than that. It's like, okay, here's a, child-friendly essay on the rise of fascism, like, basically kind of thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I can see that. That's fine. I can't say the same for the Hobbit trilogy, simply for the fact of it requires so much of what people seem to enjoy about the Hobbit trilogy, and what it seems like the trilogy itself is trying to do, requires prior knowledge of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy. So much of it is taking time to build up to the movies that have already come out that it requires, honestly, it gets to the point where it's more calling back to them than trying to set them up in any capacity. And so that's not easy to watch as a kid. That's actually quite annoying. It's like, we don't need this. So it just, what could have been a very straightforward, fun kid story, which The Hobbit originally was, it becomes basically sucking itself off, for lack of a better term.
The thing about the Hobbit series is that I can at least see where kids would get enjoyment just out of the raucous fantasy and battle
Yes.
battle scenes prior to the third movie. The third movie, for being called the Battle of the Five Armies, that is like a quarter of the film is like actual fighting.
And it's
There's
all
not a lot
CG.
that happens. Yeah, there's not a lot that happens that would keep a kid's interest in the third one. I can at least speak from myself. I did not have fun with the prequels when I saw them as a kid because I saw the last two in theaters and I fell asleep both times.
Yeah.
There are decent fight things throughout with General Grievous and the first Darth Maul fight that can be sort of interesting, but so much of those movies are like layered in political intrigue, especially the first one with all like trade negotiations and tariffs and embargoes. Like
Yeah.
I don't see where I mean I know for a fact I didn't get any enjoyment out of it, but I'm just one person, so I'm sure that differs from individual to individual.
Yeah. I can see that. I think I had the benefit that I understood a bit more of that than the average kid, just because I liked history in general at that point in my life. So it at least had that kind of benefit. And I think it also does have a bit of that benefit of it's one of those things of if you did watch it as a kid, it actually benefits to rewatch it when you're older because for that very reason. So it makes some of the more kid-like things feel more stupid, but it makes some of the more complicated parts have a bit more value to them. So there's at least some amount of redeeming value there. But again, I just can't really find such things in the Hobbit trilogy because it's just kind of mired in its own crap. It's like, we could have just had the silly dwarf adventure as they go to fight a dragon. Like, that would have been great. But
I would have loved that.
it just had to get steeped in so much other stuff. Because when it comes right down to it, those are the best parts of those movies. When it's just straight up, it's the dwarf party going off to fight Smaug. And then the moment Smaug's gone, it basically just doesn't really know what to do with itself for the rest of the runtime. And that's an entire movie.
I mean, not to just rehash our Lord of the Rings episode, but it really just, it's a kid's book versus it's a novella versus a novel. It should not have been 3 movies.
Yeah.
And that's that. And I don't know if that was Jackson's original pitch or if that was something that the studio coerced him into due to the success of the first trilogy, or if it was just a meeting of the mind sort of thing. But whoever's idea it was, not a good one.
I think I wouldn't have been surprised if Peter Jackson or whoever the original true creative force behind it was. I can imagine them trying to pitch it as 2 movies. I can see it as a duology. I think there's enough content there for maybe 2 longer movies. Making it into a third really just kind of upended it. Because even in the Hobbit novel, there's a few distinct sections. I'm pretty sure it's like the first half. It's something like it's what are the titles of them? Because it's the Battle of the Five Armies is the title of the third movie. What's the Desolation?
So it's the unexpected journey, Desolation of Smaug, and Battle of the Five Armies. Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure those are all sections in the book itself, and I'm pretty sure it might even be split into. It might be split into all 3. The third section originally is called There and Back Again because it's meant to be like the story of him returning home. And
well, I think that's the name of the book that he writes as well.
Right, exactly. And so I think if they had split it into just An Unexpected Journey and There and Back Again, I think it would have been fine. But because they had to do the 3-piece and then also turn There and Back Again into exclusively the Battle of the Five Armies, it did it no favors. It tried to make it into this big epic that I'm sure the studio wanted, but that's not what The Hobbit is, simply put. So
not at all. Nope.
They just set themselves up for failure on that one. So I will, to rehash and to do the restating of my thesis statement. I will stand by what I said, and I will not allow the internet at large to gaslight me into thinking that trilogy was anything other than pretty not great. It had a few moments that were like some childhood wonder, but it was steeped in everything else that wasn't. So much the worse for it.
Yeah, back off, internet at large.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll. They're so prone to doing that.
Lunatics. Fight me.
God knows the internet knows when to back down.
But yeah, there were a couple things this year that sort of. I mean, obviously, we just did our whole Lord of the Rings discussion. That was our episode 100.
Right,
episode 100 of the show.
Right.
And it's funny because we talked about it in our end-of-year chat for 2023. Like, oh, what are we going to do for it? What are we going to do for it? We joked about doing all the Lord of the Rings films, and then we dropped it. So I like the fact that we followed through with that and ended up actually doing that.
Yeah, and that was a good one to do for episode 100, I think, just because we've joked about doing more than 2 films in one sitting for an episode before, and we have on a couple of occasions, but the fact of doing 6 entirely was a whole other level. I'm glad we got to do a longer piece like that, just because it just gives us a lot more material to work with, and it kind of really just puts us to the test without it also just being a joke. Like, we joked about just doing, for an April Fool's thing, just doing a really fast mishmash of all the James Bond movies, and just basically just making a, hack of an episode essentially out of it, which, many of the James Bond movies are, hey. But I'm glad that we actually, and also just the fact of, I do actually quite like the Lord of the Rings movies, and I wanted to try and remember my actual feelings on the Hobbit movies, which, as it turns out, given the benefit of time to think about it, still think they're pretty crap. So it gave me, it was fully self-serving, and I know I ultimately, was I the one who picked that one? I'm pretty sure I was, but we definitely both conferred on it.
Well, if we look at the order of the episodes, I'm the one that produced that episode. I think so. I had final say, technically. Fair. I mean, it was episode 100, so it was a group decision. But yeah, I was the one that ended up producing that, because then 2 episodes later, after you made us watch Adam Sandler stuff, I got to do my favorite movie, 2001.
Right, that's it.
Which was also this year.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think we I think I must have brought it up as a concept, and then you would have had the final say. Because honestly, I don't really know what the hell else we would have done for episode 100, unless you have a better idea.
Not really. I think that us going for a series for such a seminal thing is the best way to go, because unless we do a They Remade It Again for War of the Rohirrim or something like that, like, that's the perfect format to dive into something that we wouldn't otherwise be able to cover. Like, right. It's, not as long form, but like Indiana Jones is something that would fit well into that category, because there's 5 of those movies now. And, something like that. Star Wars would be a bit too unwieldy because that's 9.
Right, Jesus.
So, it's about finding that perfect middle ground, I guess.
And I think Lord of the Rings really has that kind of grandness versus, like, Lord of the Rings versus The Hobbit was the best kind of comparison we could have done, because truly everyone, the mentality whenever the Hobbit trilogy was coming out, that everyone was having, it was basically the idea of, really? We're doing this? Okay. Because it really needed a good deep dive for us, because we've done so many different pieces that were just direct remakes or just completely out of left field changes and that sort of thing. And this really kind of felt like, this kind of really didn't feel more like one of those moments where we talk about the film industry at large and kind of what the mentality is with around doing remakes and that sort of stuff, and effectively, overdue sequels or prequels in this case. And it really just kind of helped to lay bare that, the film industry is kind of stupid sometimes. Not even necessarily because I'm sure they made gangbuster money off of making these, but as far as just on an artistic standpoint, it was like, why are we doing this? Why are we subjecting the world to this? It just felt unnecessary. And so I think that was a good summation of a lot of the stuff we've talked on here before.
Which is good. And I think that overall we had a good departure from 2023's episode lineup as well. Because I don't remember how much we talked about it in the end of year last year, but 2023 was depressing with the movies that we were talking about.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like,
I forgot about that.
Long run, like, why did we do this? Why are we doing Red Dawn and War Games and Straw Dogs? Like, what the fuck is wrong with us?
I feel like we were both kind of maybe in a mood that year. Like, I think we may not have noticed. I definitely realized, like, by the end of 2023, I needed some changes in my life. I wasn't in necessarily a bad place, but my job wasn't really going great, and there were just a few personal at-home things that I just wasn't super satisfied with, and I think I was just allowing myself to go to darker places when it came to content. So that's also, like, I kind of refound my love of horror and stuff in that one, and that usually doesn't go well. And I at least know for me that I can see kind of the through line of why I wasn't really picking the lightest of hearted movies. I definitely don't know what I was thinking with Straw Dogs, though. That was a whole new, like, the fact that was the first one I ever felt the need to give a disclaimer at the start of, because holy shit.
Right. But aside from that, like, we got 2 guests in this year, which was nice.
Yeah. We got Steph on here for the first time.
Yeah, it was great, and I've already asked her thoughts on something for next summer, if she, what she would want to do. So I'm keeping an ear out for that.
And Hannah's already chomping at the bit for the next one that we can do with her. So She loves doing this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an end of year. You know,
That's
whenever
true.
we find something, whenever we find something good, it's just a matter of, you know, usual. If we're gonna do a guest stuff, I usually leave it up to them because I don't expect them to watch some of the things that we watch. It just
And I'm half tempted at some point, and this is a chance to run it by you. I'm also tempted at some point to ever see if there's ever a movie that I could care less about, or for whatever reason I just don't think I'd be available in this time frame. If ever y'all just wanted to do an episode of just you and Hannah, and just do like a very movie musical centric kind of episode, and that way it doesn't have to worry about the three piece that we have going on, and Hannah can kind of have the limelight for a little bit longer.
mm-hmm.
It's like,
It's completely up to you how we sort of define our format. I think that would probably, if we did do that, I wouldn't consider it a main episode. It'd probably be like a special thing.
sure.
Not to say we can't do it at all. I would just probably create a new name for it and put it on the feed. I don't want to say dump because I would still edit it and make the thumbnail.
Yes, of course.
It would still be nicely produced.
I might just let Hannah have hold of a mic and just have a solo piece for a bit. God knows there's a few movies she'd like to rant about.
Always fair game.
We could do that for Steph as well. God knows she could probably spend 3 hours doing it.
Yeah, that might. I'm not editing that one. She'll
Fair.
have to edit it. Or I'll just put it out there.
You could just do it, but it has like that thing of like it kind of crossfades from one audio clip to the next, where it just kind of loses context between them. It's like the following episode has been edited from a 5.7 hour long rant piece from our good friend Stephanie. We'd say listener discretion advised, but
You know. But yeah, tons of ideas for the future. Something else that I really like that we did this year. We've done it a bit in the past, but this year we kind of went crazy with it. Is we did so many new movies.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun actually.
We got Roadhouse and Mean Girls both came out this year, and then the sequel to Chicken Run and Good Burger 2 both came out last year. So some very recent touches.
Yeah, like, and even we get we don't normally get so many from later than 2010, which like even looking at those ones that you mentioned. Then we had The Invisible Man was 2020. We had Jurassic World in 2015. Let's see.
Oh yeah, Return to Zombie Island was 2019. And
Yep. Well, the Hobbit series was 2012 to 2014. The newest Hitman movie was 2015. Like, yeah, we did quite a bit of modern stuff this time around. It was just honestly surprising. I didn't even realize we were doing that until now. But yeah, no, it's actually quite refreshing. And I think maybe that was an unconscious thing on my part, because a lot of them are ones I picked. And I don't know. I think just at a certain point, I think we both kind of were like, yeah, let's do something that isn't just in the 20th century. Either 20th century or the early 2000s, because Jesus Christ.
Yeah, as much as I love it.
True.
So I guess the question rings true then of what was the best and worst of the year, do you think?
I'll go and I'll try to do my, kind of like back and forth thing of like, I'm going to pick the one that I think was the best film we watched and then which one was my favorite. I'll probably actually go and do my favorite first because it's easy. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. I love that trilogy, and that's not even much of a contest with that one. It was a close one with Jurassic Park, obviously, but I adore the Lord of the Rings movies for all the reasons a young boy loved it when he first saw it when he was a kid with his brother. So, not a whole lot of debate to be going on with that one. As far as just the best objective movie, I'm still kind of leaning towards Invisible Man from 2020. That one was pretty spectacular for me because normally our selection for Halloween can be so all over the place. Sometimes they're very often extremely good, but sometimes they can also just be extremely dated. And honestly, even the original of The Invisible Man actually held up surprisingly well. It was actually pretty shocking, all things considered. So that was probably my probably the best film to my mind that we watched this year. Obviously, the original 2001: A Space Odyssey was still incredible. But then again, I already knew that. And so it's hard to really state like firmly, yeah, that was the best one. But, objectively, it probably is. But as far as just personal opinions go, I'd say the 2020 Invisible Man. Just because it did so much with the concept that, is honestly worth all the praise it got.
Yeah. I think in interest of fairness, I think that the year that we covered Jacob's Ladder, I also did this, where it's like, well, obviously my favorite of the year is Jacob's Ladder, but
Hmm.
since everyone already knows that, so I don't think I'll say 2001, even though it's the clear front runner for me.
Sure.
Second to that, there are so many things that I really dug that we watched this year.
Hmm.
Obviously, the Lord of the Rings trilogy and Jurassic Park are just objectively good features. I
Correct.
had fun. I had fun with The Producers and Scooby Doo on Zombie Island and The Wages of Fear. Invisible Man 2020 surprised me. I knew the legacy of the 33 version, and I mean some of the effects, how they did them, still surprised me. But I knew it was going to be a good movie. 2020, I did not have any expectations on, and that sort of surprised me. And then 2024 was sort of a John Waters renaissance for me, where I went through and watched his whole filmography, including some things I had already seen before, and that gave me a new appreciation for the original Hairspray, even though it's nowhere near one of my favorite of his because it's a bit more commercial and audience pleasing. It's still wild, and so
Hmm.
like there were so many things this year that I'm like, yeah, I really like that. That's awesome. I like that too, which is a rarity for the show. Um, but
I forgot we did
overall,
Treasure Planet this year as well.
oh yeah, that's true.
That one I just happen to like. It wasn't the best movie we watched. I'm glad we got the chance to do that one.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't care too much for Treasure Planet, but going up against that '50s Treasure Island, I was like, oh my god, award for
Award.
most boring movie we talked about this
Oh,
year.
oh yeah, extra award this year. Most boring was 1950s Treasure Island.
But yeah, I'd probably give it to just Jurassic Park underneath 2001 as my favorite thing that we got to watch and talk about.
Nice.
Just really great overall, great movie. Worst
Oh,
of
yeah.
the year. Honestly, it would either be the 1950s Treasure Island or it would be one of those Hitman movies.
Yeah.
I did not care for either of those things.
Yeah. I. Hmm. The Good Burger movies. I didn't really. Okay, the remake of Good Burger was pretty crap. Like, it was fine as far as production value goes, but that is it. Like, otherwise, I just did not care for its existence at all.
Yeah.
But then also the 2015 Agent 47 was pretty crap. Like, it was. And I like the Hitman series, just like as a game series. But holy crap, man. I don't know how you can just do so little with so much. Well,
my mind is reeling over that. They weren't as boring as that Treasure Island because technically things were happening.
right. But that doesn't
But
make
at
it
the same
good.
time, I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Right, yeah. It's like they were basically just making shit up as they went along. Like 100%. Like, I've never known a movie to truly feel like it's making itself up as it went along as much as that one there.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it doesn't even... And I still feel like I should at least bring up the remake of Island of Dr. Moreau. Because, yeah, the 96 one was objectively pretty bad. But damn if I didn't still get kind of compelled by it in a weird way. So...
I mean, if we're talking about quality of film versus enjoyment, then yeah, that movie is pretty low on the list.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were overall, I think most of what we talked about this year had some level of merit, but there were some stinkers this year. Just I haven't even brought up the Adam Sandler movie we talked about. That shows you how
Right.
little I think of these other films.
And the Longest Yard wasn't even, like, the Adam Sandler Longest Yard wasn't even that bad. It was actually pretty decent, you know? The original was still better, obviously, but, Broken Clock, I guess. Like, Adam Sandler made a movie that wasn't too terrible.
It's fine from a Sandler perspective because he has to like play by someone else's rules. I don't know.
Right.
He's not like, which is what he's always the underdog, but the smug, charismatic underdog. And when someone can literally beat him with a nightstick, some of that is reined in just a little bit.
Honestly, good point. Extremely good point. I got to see him physically abused. That actually did quite a bit for it.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I will say, I do think we had a benefit this year that, like you said, nothing we watched this year was too objectively horrible. There were ones that were bad, but they at least had some redeeming values. Even the Hitman movies, for as bad as they were, visually they looked fine, at least. We've seen worse looking movies with worse effects. Hell, Dr. Moreau had worse effects. But nothing this year really truly stood out as being that bad, but a lot stood out as not being necessarily good either. So that was definitely a downside. Even thinking back, like even rewatching Jurassic World, I kind of got reminded of, oh yeah, this isn't actually that good of a movie.
Oh, really? I was actually a bit surprised going into it this time because I liked it a little bit more than I had previously.
I was the
And
opposite.
I think part of that, well, I hated it when it came out, but watching it back to back with Jurassic Park, I just get to see all the like, oh, this movie is literally just doing Jurassic Park again, but with some elements changed and with worse theming.
Right, exactly.
So,
Which was kind of the reason
my
I've got kind of down on it.
my opinion on it was slightly higher because when I watched it the first time around, I was like, there's literally no merit to this whatsoever.
Fair.
But yeah. Also, look at this run that we had later in the year. Episode 112, 113, and 114. Sorcerer, Island of Dr. Moreau, and It Happened One Christmas. All 1977.
Oh my god.
That's just an interesting data point.
Yeah. 77 was a... God, each of those movies came out in... Like, the original Moreau came out in 77, and then the same year as Sorcerer and that remake of... That is a weird spread of, like, technological, like, changes in as far as filmmaking goes. That's wild to me, because they feel like completely different years. Especially It Happened One Christmas. That one feels like it should be either earlier or later. It's definitely not the 70s.
I guess the production's slightly different since it's a TV movie. We have American theatrical, British theatrical co-production, and then ABC TV movie with One Christmas.
Yeah, the production groups differing. That's actually probably the exact reason I think it's so weird. That's a good point. Yeah, that's odd. Didn't even realize that.
I also hated The Producers.
Yeah, the remake of The Producers was pretty bad. The original wasn't great either, honestly, but
I liked it okay, but I like Brooks's spoof stuff more than his regular comedic stuff. And that's saying something too, because I don't like a lot of his spoof stuff. Actually, I like Young Frankenstein. I like History of the World Part 1 and Blazing Saddles. All of the others, like Spaceballs, Dracula Dead and Loving It, Robin Hood Men in Time, I don't like those movies. So he has like a 50% hit rate with me, that Mel Brooks.
People tend to only really forget the big three being, Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, and the third one has just left my brain.
Spaceballs?
Thank you. Yeah, people tend to forget the rest of his crap, which, I mean, fair, I guess. I'm kind of mixed on him as well, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
But it was better than the remake.
He did his best work with Carl Reiner.
True.
But I mean, that's true too. Yeah, but better than the remake. Hey, as long as we're talking musicals, 2024 Mean Girls wasn't terrible, and Hairspray 2007 was fun too. We did 3 musicals this year.
Yeah, true. We're kind of picking that up.
Was bad.
That's honestly, yeah. And even the producers, like, I think the producers' full musical would have been better actually seeing on stage. I think As It Happens, the film version of it, I think I couldn't even tell you why. I just feel like it's weaker for it just being a filmed version. I could see myself enjoying this on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still say they really undercut themselves with like the springtime for Hitler bit that they decided to do with the 2005 one. That being, let's just make him gay. I still just think that's such the most low hanging fruit they could have done, even for the early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah.
They could have done like anything with it, and they just didn't. So
that was an unfortunate choice. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's something that I already stated for myself with the Invisible Man 2020. I'm curious what the most surprising thing we talked about was for you this year. Like, what was worse than you expected or better than you expected? Like, the epitome of that idea.
Oh, I'm not sure. I think I had never seen It's a Wonderful Life before. So I think I'll do both sides of that. I'll do one that was worse than I expected, one that was better than I expected. At least as far as surprising goes. It's a Wonderful Life was probably worse than I expected, just because I had never known anything about the original story. I'd never seen anything about it. I'd seen people do assorted like parodies of it over the years, obviously. But I don't know. I think again, it's a personal axe to grind, but I just don't care for the messaging it's really going for that. Oh, because this guy has gone through some amount of suffering in his life, it's okay. And like all these other things going on, this, that, and the other. It's a deeply Christianized message, and I get that, but it's still just, it's really not for me. And I know Christmas movies are supposed to have a certain amount of that, but this one in particular, I just didn't really care for. And I don't know why, for whatever reason, I preferred the way it was told in the remake still. I just, I think the story does lend itself better to having the wife character as the main character, having it basically be gender swapped. I think it actually makes a bit more sense logistically in a lot of cases, and I think just the emotional core holds up a bit better in my mind. And that might just be some, misandric mentality in my strange left leaning mind or whatever the fuck people are going to say. But I don't know. I just think I was surprised at how much I didn't enjoy the original It's a Wonderful Life. I think, Jimmy Stewart's performance was pretty much the only thing that held it up for me, and that's it. Um, as far as the other direction, I don't know. So I think as far as surprises, actually, it would have been one just a couple prior to it would have been Wages of Fear. I did not expect that to be as good as it was. That one was a nail biting, really cool kind of story. You don't get a lot of really good straight thrillers anymore, and it's hard to really do things that are just hard thrillers that aren't also thriller action or thriller horror or whatever it might be. But this one was about as pure cut thriller as it can get, of the constant tension going on with this whole ordeal and just how it plays out in the end. It's like, yeah, I'll say the original's ending was kind of crap still. I think they could have done it at least a little bit better, but I don't know. That one snuck up on me whenever we watched it.
Well, I remember even in the episode, you were like, I didn't know what to expect going into these movies because both of these titles are terrible.
Yes, they are terrible. I'll defend that as well. I still think those titles make jack shit sense. Wages of Fear I still prefer over Sorcerer as a name, just because the Sorcerer one, it feels like they had the name Sorcerer, which, like, again, you mentioned that there's a reference to the original story, I'm pretty sure, in that one.
Well, Sorcerer is the name of one of the trucks that they use.
Right.
It's like painted on the hood or the side of the truck, I think.
Yeah, and I get that, but I just also just think that's a bad thing to use as the title. It just right. Kind of feels hammered in, like, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I think, yeah, I like the original Wages of Fear way more than I expected. I will say, I think also the biggest surprise I had in this whole thing, just in general, was the fact that 2001: A Space Odyssey had a sequel. Like, I fully just in general, like the fact that you told me that and it was like legitimately, yeah, no, there's an actual sequel and it actually expands on what happened in the original, and it's not just meant to be open for interpretation in a lot of ways. Like, oh, okay, cool, that's fine. It doesn't even necessarily detract from the original in any way. I just didn't know that was a thing.
I've been wanting to do the 2001 episode for so long. I was just, because I knew about the 2010 movie because I had seen it on TV years and years ago. But I was just looking for the perfect opportunity to do it. And I was like, you know what? 2001 isn't necessarily a good idea for a 100th episode because that is just to appease me. Right. But I think for the first episode of our new run post 100, definitely. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, that was a good one. Just as far as just general surprises, that one was the one that surprised me the most. It's just its existence. It wasn't bad. It was actually quite good. Nowhere near the original, of course, and that's not even a contest. Still, it was a nice little surprise. Yeah, I think
that is nice.
I think the least surprising thing was the fact that the original Treasure Island was dull as dirt.
A live action Disney movie
from the 50s. It's, yeah. I couldn't if I had to describe any of our reviews as far like for whatever reason regarding seasonings, I would describe that review and that film in general. It was the seasoning of flour. It was nothing. It was not a seasoning. It was barely even a movie. It was just, I watched it and that's all I can say definitively about it. It's like, this was a film and that's it. It was a film from Disney in the 1950s. What the fuck else do you want?
This was a movie that happened.
It's like, this was by definition a film.
Oy. Well, do you have anything else on our podcast output?
Oh, I don't know. I I'm glad we are getting better at picking movies, I guess. I'm glad that we didn't run into anything as bad as Ghost in the Shell or The Departed this time around. Like, there were some that may have come close. I still think, like, obviously the Hitman movies, just both of them in general, were pretty bad, but they weren't that bad, so, which is nice. Um, but yeah, I'm glad that we're trying to actually, one, not be as dark as last year, and two, also just have a better nose for quality this time around. So that was just kind of a nice little break where I didn't feel like I had to get all vitriolic about any one film in particular.
Well, I'll let you know it's completely accidental on my part. For the most part, some of those movies I knew were good going in, but I try to experiment a lot. And like I said in the previous episode, that omnibus I put together, I already put what my tentative schedule for next year is, and it's kind of all over the place. So we'll definitely see how that turns out.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I like to try to get weird with it.
Yeah, I mean, God knows that's hardly anything new for us.
Right. Well, how about we transition into films of 2024, just in general things that we've watched? Did anything stand out to you this year?
Does it need to have come out this year?
It hasn't in the past.
Good, just making sure. I was trying to remember if that was the case or not, but yeah, that's fully correct. As far as things I've watched this year, you and I had the chance because as part of our movie nights, occasionally not everyone can make it, and on this occasion it was just you and me. You and I both watched the film Seconds, which was a 1960
John Frankenheimer film before Island of Dr. Moreau 96.
Correct, yes, before that. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I keep thinking back on that one. That was a hell of a good movie. That was a really good one. I'm glad that was the one that we ended up with. It's hard to even necessarily describe in kind of like a summation sort of way because so much goes into it, and there's a lot of theming you could decide is part of it or things you want to focus on. My biggest takeaway, as I did my Letterboxd review of it, was basically just that, yeah, it's a breakdown of the idea of what marks success, especially in the in the mind and soul of the American man, especially during the 1960s and into the 70s, and how that's like detrimental to living an actually good life, and how a lot of that stuff's purely fictional and all these different things. It's such a cool breakdown that I haven't seen in a while. I mean, hell, at times it approaches Fight Club levels of a breakdown of the male psyche kind of thing. And I wish more people would know about it for that simple reason. It's so cool in the way it goes about it. And damn if its ending isn't bleak. No spoilers. I'll try my best not to spoil it for people, but damn, the way it goes about it is just, it's haunting in a way. I still think about it and the way they presented it. I think even when we finished watching it, I'm pretty sure I just went, dude, holy shit. Like, it was a fantastic one.
I was a big fan of that too. I really like how the movie ends the same way it begins, visually. So you're like piecing together, like, it's a bit of one larger puzzle, and you're like, oh, that was the whole point of the movie. Oh my god. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, I was a big fan of that. Just, I don't know, just going through, because speaking of Letterboxd, because I made that list of the movie night movies that we've done. Onibaba was this year.
That's the first one we watched.
Yeah. Well, the very first one was The Never Ending Story. No one made it but me. So,
right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
But Onibaba, Moon, Paris, Texas, Don't Look Now, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Last Unicorn, Moonstruck, Seconds, The Shout, Deadly Friend, Carnival of Souls, Cat People, the remake of Cat People, Cabin Fever, Drive-Thru, Hereditary, Blood Tea, and Red String, 1988's Alice, Stand By Me, Hot Frosty, and Sanjuro.
Fuck, I forgot about Hot Frosty.
How did I
already watch that one? God damn. Yeah, I'm glad those are you have a good mind for selections as far as those go.
Again, they're not all good. I just like to go all over the place.
Correct. Yeah.
See what I can find.
I mean, I'm trying to think of I'm sure probably the worst one I watched this year was probably Hot Frosty, if I'm honest. I think if I just had to give a quick answer to that one. Otherwise, as far as just other ones I've seen this year, because I've been trying to kind of go down farther with the list I've made for Hannah, and We did a few this year. I believe this was the year we did. God, like you said, it feels like this year doesn't make any goddamn sense. I can't remember if this. We watched it this year or it was last year. I'm pretty sure it was this year. Hannah and I got to watch Spotlight, which I've already seen, but I just got reminded of, oh, this movie's incredible in every regard. God, that phone went off behind me again. That freaked me the hell out.
I don't know if that was this year or last year, but I do remember you bringing it up on the show. So
yeah, I want to.
I guess that doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's fine. I did also, because it is also on the list, and we did also watch it for the show because I ended up, making that one of the options. I was surprised by Paris, Texas. It is not the movie I was expecting to see. That's for damn sure.
Nope, not what I thought it was.
I fully thought going into it, it was going to be like a Tarantino style, like thriller action-y kind of thing. But then it ended up being a very long, poignant kind of, breakdown of the American spirit and like the American dream and that sort of thing. Like a lot of good, kind of visual cues and coloring and everything. That one was good. That one, I'm glad we watched that one. I don't know how else to even really think about it, but I feel better for having seen it. That's for sure.
Like just watch Harry Dean Stanton come back from the brink and then slowly go back into the brink again.
But like healthily this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a new understanding and appreciation.
Right. He did still straight up kidnap his own kid, but, that's neither here nor there.
They had fun with it. They had a camp out at the bank.
Right. Yeah, that happened.
I just going through the list of things that I saw in the theater this year, I saw a number of things that I quite liked, which I'm happy with. The vast majority of things that I caught in theaters I actually thought were pretty good, which is nice because it feels like I've been doing nothing but complaining the past couple of episodes, but just not including things I saw in theaters that came out last year, like Poor Things in the Zone of Interest, which I liked. Dune Part 2, Late Night with the Devil. I saw The TV Glow. In a Violent Nature was this year. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Twisters surprised me in that it wasn't objectively terrible. It was like whatever, but I think I liked it more than the original Twisters.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the original Twister wasn't really all that to write home about either. So
no, it's not great. People remember it better than they should because of how stacked the cast is.
Right.
Longlegs I enjoyed. Cuckoo I liked more than Longlegs. The substance was great. Beetlejuice was surprising. It was not completely awful. Like, it better than a lot of what Tarantino, good lord, what Tim Burton's been putting out lately. And I don't know, The Wild Robot was fun. I just saw Nosferatu not that long ago, and once again, Robert Eggers has not disappointed me. I thought it was really good. So, like,
yeah, I gotta go catch that one.
Oh yeah, it won't be around in theaters for too much longer. It launched Christmas Day. Today's the 30th, only 5 days later. It is already showing minimal screen times at the super deluxe theater near me in the back of it because they had to punt all of the releases for the Wicked sing-alongs.
Oh,
don't
God.
You know? So,
I'm hoping that doesn't mean
soon.
I'm hoping that doesn't mean the Sonic 3 movies will be gone by the time I come to see you.
I don't know. There are only 2 playing at the theater near me.
Which, like, if it's gone within a month of its release, that's insane to me. In a period of time when not much else is coming out. Like, what the fuck else are they going to show in those theaters?
That's a good question. I was going to say Dogman, but that's not until the 31st.
And what the fuck even is that?
I think it's that Dave Pilkey book. It's an animated thing. You know, the Captain Underpants guy.
Oh, yeah, because I'm sure that's going to do gangbusters.
I don't know. I don't know about any of this.
Fair.
But also, to that end, I saw Venom: The Last Dance in theaters. I saw Borderlands.
God.
I saw Argyle. There were a couple of stinkers that Ghostbusters. So, not all perfect.
This year, as far as releases went, was kind of all over the map, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeesh.
That new Garfield movie was this year too. Woof.
Oh yeah.
Woof, I say.
I will say I did enjoy Wicked. That's one of the few things I actually went to the theater to see. It's like, incidentally, I'm not going to try to make the resolution of I want to go to the theater more because, good lord, it's difficult. 1, it's difficult to even want to go to the theater. 2, it's difficult to find the time. 3, I'm not going to pay potentially $20 to $30 depending on the theater for what might be a crap movie. So
fair enough. I will not argue.
Yeah. Um, Ooh, I will say also, and I had seen this before, but it's nice to be able to re-see it. I got to show Hannah all of Over the Garden Wall this year, which was
Oh yeah, you had been talking about that.
yeah, and it had been long enough since I'd seen it originally, and this was the 10-year anniversary of it, which is what spurred us watching it. Um, it's such a damn good little series. It's essentially a film. It's 2.5 hours long, like the whole series, and it's so dang fun, and it's just such a good like feel good series for fall. There's very few truly like fall centered things that aren't also just horror or Halloween themed, but Over the Garden Wall nails it out of the like knocks it out of the park in that regard. It's I don't know. I feel so dang cozy watching it. It's so fun, and the cast is great. So yeah, that one was just a good one to be able to rewatch. I rewatched a fair few movies this year, which I don't normally do. I mean, it's mainly for the benefit of showing them to Hannah. But I saw that. I saw Die Hard again for this year, which still holds up great. I think I defend that it might be the one of the better action movies of all time. It's at least top 5. And it's not just because it's like all bullshit action all the time. If anything, that's the exact reason it's good, is that it's not that. It's actually stakes and silly things happening and actually gives you time to breathe, and friggin' Alan Rickman as a German terrorist is so silly. It's difficult not to love.
There's also tons of character moments that, especially between Bruce Willis and Reginald Valjeanson as he's assisting him. And it really helps that it's an action movie that is like a bottle episode of TV, right? It all takes place in this one location that you really get to put through the ringer. A lot of these action movies, I think I was talking about it with the newest of the Jurassic World series, so this was like 2 years ago now. Whereas like, why is it that every single action movie they go to Morocco for like 20 minutes?
Yeah.
So many of these movies are constantly on the fucking move, going from place to place. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, it's like
keep it simple.
We lost out on getting good Indiana Jones style movies, or just good Indiana Jones movies. And now they've started to pick it apart for parts. And one of the things being the grand globe-trotting adventure where you see them like a line on a map traced from one country to the next. That's kind of what these movies feel like. God knows John Wick is horrible about that. I like John Wick whenever they were doing stuff in the main like Continental Hotel, because it's like, okay, we get to actually learn about this place and we get to let it breathe and do these sorts of things. I don't need X number attack in either a city street number 20,000 or another random building that we're never going to see again. It's like, let it breathe. Let like the oh god, I can't even remember the name of the building, but the main building in Die Hard is kind of a character in and of itself.
Nakatomi Towers, Nakatomi
Yes.
Plaza,
Nakatomi Plaza. I'm pretty sure that's it. It's either that Nakatomi and Nakamori or something like that.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it's been a long time, but really, I just rewatched Die Hard in like 2022, something like that. So
I just rewatched it this year, so I definitely don't have an excuse.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. It gives us the chance to explore. It gives us the chance to, let this character have its moment in this area without it. And it feels desperate. It feels like, yeah, he's at his wit's end by the end of it. Because, yeah, he's just been stuck in this one room for 2 hours, or this one building for like 2 hours, getting the shit kicked out of him. Meanwhile, the kind of unstated thing about all these action movies that go all around the world is they're given a lot of breaks. They get to recharge and just like hang out on a plane before they have to go to their next ass kicking. It's like, that's not that impressive. At the end of the day, these guys are kicking ass for maybe 20 minutes total. As you guys get right down to it. Otherwise, these guys are just having to go other places and chat with people. Like, that's not an action. That's a drama piece with some action set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves, your first movie was okay, but the rest of them not so much.
Oh boy.
I don't know why I've decided to pick on John Wick for this one. They are still fine movies, but still.
I'm actually interested, now that we're starting to waver a little bit, if you have anything else on movies of this year.
I don't really know. We watched a fair few for the show. Not for like we obviously watched stuff for the show. I meant to say we watched a fair few for movie nights, and that was a lot of fun. I saw a lot of musicals this year simply for the fact that Hannah was in quite a few productions. I also saw her in a few plays. Those are worth, enjoying at the time, but they're community theater ones. It's kind of hard to really delve into the specifics on that end.
Sure.
As it is, though, I don't really actually feel like I've done my due diligence of watching enough film or TV this year. I just haven't really had the drive for it. And that's kind of part of the problem I've had with this year is I feel like I've maybe plateaued a little bit as far as creativeness goes. Like either creative consumption, like consumption of either creative mediums or the production of them on my own end. I've done a lot of stuff on a exterior basis. Like I said, new job, engaged, doing a lot of stuff at home. I got to meet my baby nephew just a few days ago, which was incredible. But I just kind of feel like I, as a person, haven't really done a whole lot, like on a personal level, which kind of sucks. I couldn't really tell you what else I could think about the movies from this year because I didn't really engage with them as much as I wanted to. That's
No, that's
kind of crappy.
that's fine. I mean, that's the way it goes. Different things take priority, and I mean,
Yeah.
you aren't expected to just sit around and watch things all day either. You know, you gotta, it's a balance for sure. So,
Right.
in 2020, also the movie night thing, we only started in like August, so
Fair.
we'll be experiencing a lot more of those in 2025 as well, and I'm sure we'll all be picking very interesting things to show one another.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I think now that we've
So,
had kind of like the run up, we actually are gonna get to stretch into it a bit, which I'm gonna enjoy.
mm-hmm.
But you know, okay, you go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
It'll be fun. That's all.
But any other thoughts for you for movies this year? I know you've made a concerted effort to enjoy more films, especially in the theater.
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on everything that, theater wise, like things I watched, things I didn't watch, all the movie night things. Obviously, I've watched more stuff here and there. Actually, my New Year's resolution for last year was I participated in that Criterion challenge that happens every year on Letterboxd, where it's like a different movie for every week of the year, and they're all different categories. The only thing that binds them all together is that they are movies that have been curated by Criterion in the 40, 50 years that company's been curating movies. So there's a lot to choose from. I did accomplish that. I was able to, watch everything, watch all 52 of the movies I picked for the challenge before the end of the year. And I'm very proud that I got to do that. And I've already made my list for 2025. I'll be doing the challenge again. And some of those movies I'll probably screen for movie night. I did that this year too. A couple of the movies I was like, we'll just do Moonstruck and Sanjuro, for example. And Don't Look Now and Onibaba, like all of those movies were part of the challenge. Wages of Fear was part of the challenge. I did it early in the year and I was like, oh shit, this is a great movie. And then I picked it for a podcast episode.
Oh, right.
So,
didn't even realize.
Yeah. But yeah, I got to see The Elephant Man for the first time, which is like probably the most straightforward movie that David Lynch ever directed. I saw Naked Lunch, The Long Good Friday, The Player, which is that Robert Altman movie about Hollywood. Tim Robbins is in it. I saw a bunch of things and very happy with all the different things that I've experienced up to this point now. I'm on The Waterfront, Best Picture Oscar winner. I watched that as part of the challenge. I did with Marlon Brando. I watched that like a week or two after we recorded the episode on Island of Dr. Moreau. So it was like double heaping helping of Marlon Brando just by complete coincidence.
I'm guessing a better rendition of Marlon Brando.
Yeah, I think I talked about it on the episode. I was like, I like the movie. I don't really like him in it. So,
fair. I gotta say, and this is a complete aside, but I feel like it needs to be said. Why is Marlon Brando regarded as being so good? The vast majority of things I've ever seen him in have always just been like either or crap. There's like maybe two things I could say he was genuinely good in, that being The Godfather and I guess A Streetcar Named Desire. I thought he was fine in Apocalypse Now, but nothing to write home about.
I mean, I think it's one of those things where legend precedes him. There's probably some deal of whatever that goes into it that we can't fully unpack without having lived through. It's like, why is James Dean so popular and he's always on the Mount Rushmore of movies? He was only ever in 3 movies and only one of them's any good. Well,
Fair.
He died young. There was a culture around it, so the same probably applies to Marlon Brando in a different way. I probably couldn't fully put it out there into words since I didn't live through it. I can only do retrospect.
Yeah, I guess you hear so many stories about the guy. I guess that's kind of the main reason. Like, how he's like his mentality around acting and that sort of thing. But yeah, like I'll just see all these different things about like trivia of like, oh, why so many people wanted to be part of the Dr. Moreau remake was simply for the fact of Marlon Brando was in it. And I just think back more and more, and it's like, yeah, but like, why? It's like, I don't get it, y'all. The guy's kind of a fop. Like, what are we doing here?
Apparently, he had a on and off gay love affair with underdog voice actor Wally Cox as well, which I know.
There's a joke to be
And
made there, but I'm not going to stoop that low.
allegedly, also, he had a brief affair with Richard Pryor, and the only evidence I have of this is a story told by record producer Quincy Jones, who just so happened to die this year.
Oh my god.
But I know that Richard Pryor's daughter was asked about it, and she was like, probably. So
Well,
maybe that's true. I don't know.
The quote I will always go back to when regarding that sort of thing with like potentially homosexual affairs in Hollywood, specifically between men, of I believe it was Tom Hardy who said something to the effect of, "I'm an actor in Hollywood. Of course I've had sex with men." It's like, yeah, at a certain point, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, you guys are some of the most well-known human beings on Earth in oftentimes in the best shape of your life, being surrounded by every controlled and uncontrolled substance known to man. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if y'all fuck like mad. The least surprising thing is that it's with another guy. Like, come on. Like, give me the shit like that was, back in early Hollywood where it like involved like 20 people and also a tiger. Like, come on.
Well,
early Hollywood was scary, man.
Also, just real quick, I looked it up just because I was like, oh, do I want to be putting rumors out there that could potentially libel. So just to clarify, not Richard Pryor's daughter, but one of his ex-wives.
Oh,
so
fair.
Slightly different, but she was like, yeah, probably. So
I mean, if anyone's gonna know,
I
feel like an ex-wife would know more than a daughter.
I just wanted to make it clear.
As we talk about the potentially gay love affairs of either, assorted living and dead actors.
Well, now seems like a good time as any to do a brief bit on the Oscars, as we usually do.
Sure. I have not paid attention at all to any sort of award stuff this year. Last year was very big for me, but this year I couldn't care less. So I'll let you lead the charge here.
I think the only reason last year was big for you because you never pay attention to them. But last year, Everything Everywhere swept, so it was like hard to avoid.
Well, it was that, and also both it and The Whale coming out in the same year was just such a 1-2 punch of just
that's true.
Just like next level film, pardon the use of the word, film weight. When it came to just how much they were in just the popular mindset, the fact that Everything Everywhere deserved much of the praise it got. Maybe not all of it, but a solid 80% of it. And the fact that, Brendan Fraser fucking killed it in The Whale. It's like, yeah, this is worth the attention at this point. So.
Yeah. But I'm actually proud because this is the first year in a long time. Just speaking to the intimate love affair that I had with the movies this time around, I saw everything that was nominated. Down to the shorts. Because I found out a couple years too late that the theater by me that I'm always telling you about, when the Oscars are rolling around, it does nights where it's just like, hey, here's all the animated shorts that have been nominated. Here's all the live action shorts that have been nominated. And you just watch them all in like an hour and a half to 2 hour block. So
your theater rules, man. Nothing near me does anything nearly that cool.
It does that. It's always doing the flashback cinema. It's always I'm a big fan of the theater by me, which is why I'm at the theater all the time.
You have a good reason to go to. Like, one, your theater is pretty close to you. Mine is at least 20 minutes away into the busiest part of town. And two, you have so many cool things going on. Meanwhile, mine are just like, it's just like the AMC or a different AMC. It's like, Jesus Christ.
I'm glad they're pulling these things together. But at any rate, I was very happy that I caught everything that was nominated. I do it in a desperate hope that I will see what has won. And it's like, okay, I caught what has won. I didn't have to do that this time around because we got pretty close to an Oppenheimer sweep.
Wow.
Which I watched Oppenheimer when it came out before the nominations, but it was pretty clear that it was going to be nominated.
Was Oppenheimer this year?
Yes, it was this summer. It was last year, Barbenheimer, but this is the 2024 Oscars. So
right, yes, sorry.
At the start of this year.
Right. Sorry. For a second there, I was like, hang the fuck on. It's like, what did I miss this year?
Dude, for as much as I've been in the theaters this year, I cannot tell you what's going to be nominated next year. I have no idea. I don't think I watched anything that I would classify as like true best picture material. So I whatever it was, I must have missed it.
Fair.
Um,
Yeah, my
will be
God.
interesting coming February what's on the short list. But yeah, Oppenheimer took Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor. I am glad that Divine Joy Randolph took Supporting Actress for The Holdovers. That was a movie I saw late in the year last year that I really was hoping would get nominated for something. It
Hmm.
got nominated for a ton of things, but it only won one because Oppenheimer kept eating its lunch.
Right.
But
Which, like, fair, I guess. I mean, I don't think it deserved all the praise it got. I've seen parts of it at this point. I still haven't seen the whole thing, but I've seen enough of it to be like, I mean, I get it, but at the same time,
I really liked it, and at the very least, if you look at all the things that were nominated for Best Picture, I do think Oppenheimer took it for a good reason. It
fair.
was Oppenheimer, American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. Which, by the way, that's part of the problem is that we, within the past decade, have switched from doing 5 nominations to 10.
Ugh.
But and that list of movies is a pretty good list of movies. I don't think Maestro or American Fiction deserve to be on that list. I didn't think
Yeah,
those were particularly good, but everything else was great.
yeah. I saw most of American Fiction. It was good, but yeah, like you said, not quite movie of the year level.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan, and Maestro, that was the picture where Bradley Cooper is playing Leonard Bernstein throughout his life, and I don't know, he seemed to be doing like a caricature of the guy. It didn't feel particularly
Well, yeah,
meaningful.
I was gonna say, I saw some early crap get kind of flown around about that one with his portrayal, and that there is apparently a lot of like accusations of anti-Semitism going on with it, and like there's a whole lot of other stuff like mired in there. So I wasn't really sure how that one was gonna pan out, and I'm glad it didn't like crash and burn. At least, I guess.
Yeah, I'm interested what some of that discourse was because there is some anti-Semitism and anti-homosexuality stuff in the movie, but that's
I
because
was
of the time period it takes place in. That's the guy. So,
Well, the main one I saw is like whenever the first images came out of Bradley Cooper playing him was like the prosthetic he had for his nose seemed like almost
oh
cartoonishly
yeah.
oversized. But then like I think the family itself came forward and said like, no, it's fine. So I think that pretty quickly died down after that.
Well, if those are the complaints that it's anti-Semitism, that kind of sucks because you're just looking at it from a surface level of like, oh, big news on the like. Have you seen a picture of Leonard Bernstein?
Right, yeah, and then
I
people were
mean,
like
guy has
actually
a big nose.
bringing it up like, yeah, no, that's just I think it was mainly just the fact that Bradley Cooper playing him, a lot of people were like, that doesn't seem right. But I think
Sure,
it was more of
sure.
a vibe thing than anything. So it's like that. It's kind of how people accusing it of performing anti-Semitism itself kind of came back around into coming off as anti-Semitic. So
But it's like also it's like okay, maybe Bradley Cooper wasn't the best person to play him. But Bradley Cooper directed and produced the movie. It was his movie, so you can't stop it. If the man wants to do it, then he's gonna do it because it
right,
was his film. um, yeah, but there's nothing much else to go over here. Like I said, Oppenheimer took most of it. The Boy and the Heron won for Best Animated Feature, which I know both of us are kind of lukewarm to mixed on, but
yeah.
honestly, if you look at all the other things that came out, it's like, I mean, it probably deserved it.
I mean, it's
None of the
still
other things are
it,
great.
it's still a good animated film. I just think as far as the story of it goes, I think it's pretty hit and miss. Um,
It has
but you
good
know,
animation, yes.
the animation is good. I think what it still feels like prime Miyazaki. It's I don't know. It feels less put together than so many of his other ones. I think the best way I put it is like it feels like Spirited Away for adults, and so it makes even less sense. Which is that's to say, as if to say, Spirited Away wasn't also a good piece for adults. But I'm sure you know what I mean.
No, I do. It's a very confusing picture.
Yeah. So I'm glad I saw it at least. I wish I didn't see it with the most annoyingly raucous people in the world behind me who just couldn't help but like laugh full belts at every tiny, potentially funny moment. And my God, that was annoying. So that may have also tinged my experience just slightly, but
That sounds insufferable. And also, I don't know how it was cast for the dub because I know you saw the dub, so I don't know how the performances went. I saw the sub and it was perfectly acceptable. I am not a subs over dubs snob. It really varies. It's just Ghibli specifically has a really bad history with having rotten dubs, mostly because of their partnership with Disney. So I
Yeah.
don't know how that was. I know Defoe was in there and Pattinson was in there, but
Defoe was barely in it. He was in it for like one quick on-screen character, which for the record was actually a very good performance for when he was there. Um, it also had Christian Bale as the main character's father. He was fine in it. I wish they had focused a bit more on that character because he seemed like a bit more of a he seemed like a good point of like he clearly seemed to be a bad guy, and I wish they'd kind of focus more time on that, but they just kind of brush over it in the end. Um, I will say though, Pattinson, who played the Heron, he rocked. I thought he was great. I honestly thought this dub was solid 7 out of 10 as far as dubs go. Um, certain the parts could have been better. I think the main character, the boy, was fine. I think he brought some good emotion along, but I think Pattinson took it honestly. Whenever he was on screen, his voice is so. It's always weird whenever you remember that Robert Pattinson is such a weird guy and such a weird actor that when he's doing stuff that isn't like kind of the moody, broody stuff, when he actually gets just to be kind of quirky, it's actually really fun. And so him being a heron was actually a really good piece.
okay. Well, I'm glad it mostly worked out. It's interesting that Bale was given a part. Um, I guess there was just that line of communication open since he was Howl
Right, yeah.
in that dub.
And like I said, he's a
But
fairly minor part. He's a major character, but he's not present for he's fairly present for the
right,
first third of the film, but obviously for the remaining 2/3 he only shows up occasionally.
yeah, it's not his movie.
No,
So
far from it. I wish I knew the name
okay.
of. You know what? Before I continue on from that, I need to check the fucking name of the who played the boy, who's had a name, but I can't remember it. So one moment.
Okay. But yeah, just looking at
Dubcast.
these other ones is Nimona, which was whatever.
Oh,
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
yep. It was I believe, Luca Padova. I don't know him specifically, but I'm sure he has a filmography.
Okay.
Uh, no, not really. There's a few random things, but it's
Good on him.
yeah, he's like
um,
just a pretty mixed set of things. So who knows? He was best known for showing up in the Netflix series You, but beyond that, not a whole lot. So fair enough. He's in the
but
oh
yeah,
he was in the most recent TV series of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
I guess
Like
that got rebooted, probably straight to Paramount
probably
Plus.
yeah. There's one there was one in 2019 and another one in 2022.
Okay.
So
Well, again, as far as animated features concerned, it was probably best that it took it. Nimona was whatever, but you could tell that it had kind of been defanged since it because it had to get picked up by Netflix after Blue Sky folded.
right, yeah.
Well, maybe Netflix was just the distributor and it was animated by Skydance. I don't remember, but there were clear differences between the original material and what eventually got shown, which kind of hindered the performance of Nimona. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse looks fine, but it had a really troubled production. It's half a movie, and it's not a great half a movie, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
That one will
And
always just be notable for the fact that I saw that with Steph when I went to go visit her, and the movie theater lost power halfway through, so we only saw half the movie. So we saw a quarter of a movie.
yeah, that's great.
So that was funny.
Um, and then Elemental didn't have a great narrative. It was mostly for its technical prowess, but I don't think the story was all that special just because it's the same stories that Disney's been trying to tell with like, parental drama and all that. And then Robot Dreams was fine. The best part of it is it's a completely silent. It's not a silent movie. There's sounds and there's like songs that'll play on the radio, but there's no dialogue, which is interesting.
I actually don't know that one.
You would be forgiven for that because it barely aired in any theaters over here. It was a Spanish and French co-production that aired at like a film festival in New York, and then it got a couple of screenings before the Oscars happened.
Oh, okay. I've seen snippets of it like float around. I didn't know what that was. Okay, I didn't know that was a full film. It just seemed like it was maybe like an independent project or something that someone was doing. But no, okay, that's what that is.
No, that I think that was a perfectly fine film, but one, it drags a bit because it's basically turning a children's book with a couple of pages into an hour and a half feature, and also it has no staying power in the culture because it didn't screen.
Right.
Barely
Fair.
anyone saw it.
It's
But
got a
whatever.
98% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Um, for the 3 people that saw it, yeah.
Yeah, fair.
I but yeah, I don't have any. I This is probably the longest we've talked about the awards in one of these shows. It's usually just an afterthought that I like to touch on to see where the industry's headed and things like that. But when it's such a clear sweep and it's like, oh, Poor Things gets one thing, Barbie gets one award for original song. We'll give something to the Holdovers, something to the Godzilla team. Everything else goes to Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
It's hard to use that as like a
I will still say that Greta Thunberg was
rule.
robbed of, not Greta Thunberg. That's a different lady entirely. Fucking Gerwig. I'm so sorry. Greta Gerwig was robbed for the best director for Barbie. The fact that she wasn't even nominated was some bull.
It's okay. She was awarded in a different way. She's been thrown into the Disney stocks so that she can direct to their Snow White remake that's coming out soon.
I feel so bad for her.
It's like, oh, you're a successful director in Hollywood. You get to come over to the Disney house and you can work on Marvel or Star Wars. So many things to choose from. So
let's give you some CG dwarves.
I've been getting the trailer for that recently. It looks abhorrent. Not that I
looks
expected it to
awful.
be different, but it looks worse than I thought it would.
I don't know what world we're living in where the remakes that Disney is putting out now, the movies in general they're putting out now, they are just doing shit that looks objectively bad. Like, it's not even like, oh, it doesn't really work that well, or maybe there's some stuff. No, it just looks like crap. What the hell are they expecting?
It is so ugly. It is.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry for the animators in the Disney sweatshop that spent 10 months animating Dopey's face. It looks bad. I'm sorry.
Well, you guys I'm sure you were directed to do it in a particular way, but that particular way is bad. And I'm sure you know it. I'm sure you guys in crafting it were like, this is hot garbage.
It's just a job. I don't think any of them are like, this is my child. This is my... No, they're probably like, oh my god, I'm thankful that I no longer have to touch this.
Just like, I need the camel's back to break already when it comes to just this CGI crap that we've been having to deal with for the better part of 2 decades. It just looks bad. We could do this again with a live action thing with some camera tricks. Forced perspective is a thing we've been doing for centuries, quite honestly. We could have done this so simply, but no. All CG. Hell, you could have done this shit with the borrowers. Like, come on.
Also, it's like... I'm not a little person, so apologies if this doesn't come across the right way, but like, why not just hire 7 people of that stature that could do that role?
Yeah.
Are they not allowed to work anymore? Is it because they don't want to be calling real people the word dwarves in a fantasy movie? That I don't understand. That is about... I'll stop right there. That's the closest I will ever possibly become to a right-wing crank complaining about woke culture. Because even then, I think it's more about, like, why are we not giving these people jobs? Why are we animating ugly as sin characters to do it instead?
Right. And, like, I'm sure Disney also is for that very reason of, like, they don't want to get caught in the fucking... Like, between the rock and the hard place that is that situation. It's you either get attacked by the right-wing crowd of, like, oh, they're doing it to, hire on what are effectively a minority. It's not a typical minority, but it is by definition a minority of the people in this country, in this world. Or you get caught between the leftist side who are like, oh, so you're using these people who have been regarded as dwarves for centuries as dwarves, like, and setting back their movement or like their plight hundreds of years or whatever the fuck. It's like, there's no winning there. So I kind of get it. I still think it's crap. And I fully agree with you if done with basic level respect and making sure they're, paid and respected and not treated like the munchkins in the fucking the original Wizard of Oz, like, it's a bare minimum. Although, to be fair, Disney hasn't had a great history when it comes to hiring little people either. The hell, in the parks alone, like, what's the one story where back in like the 50s or 60s, they hired a bunch of them to play elves who basically got stranded on a rooftop and just had to get drunk and started streaking at one point.
I mean, that just sounds like a behind-the-scenes story from The Wizard of Oz as well.
Honestly, fair. So that might be it. Honestly, I may just be conflating them. But yeah, like I fully get what you mean. I'm sure there are so many little people who just want to be given that work and would be happy to do it if given a baseline level of respect. I'm sure they'd love doing it. Of just like, hey, we get to just be the seven dwarves. Those are fun characters. Like, fucking hell.
It actually seems more disrespectful because it's like, well, you can't play this because this is a fantasy thing that doesn't really exist.
And
It almost seems worse.
it's like, yeah, we respect you too much to let you do this. It's like, what the fuck?
Oh my god. Well, I'm glad that we've started this conversation because I think it's time to head into our favorite part of the show, which is looking at what's coming out in 2025.
Oh, dear
and
God.
talking about it.
Right. Fair.
We've already talked at length about Snow White, which I don't even know when that's supposed to come out. I've been getting a ton of trailers for it, but it's probably not coming out until like April or something. So
Probably not, no.
they're really getting out there ahead of time to do that. But one of the, because usually this is way more freeform. I don't have a list. I just go through Wikipedia and pull what they have listed, and I think
Yeah, I have IMDb.
Google, IMDb. But the first thing I want to touch on is the Wolfman, the newest version of the Wolfman, which was supposed to come out last year because we talked about it at last year's show.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out this year.
I don't know what pushed it, because it was already done filming by the time the strikes happened. Maybe it was just an advertising thing, like they pushed it because the actors couldn't go on tour to promote it. But I've seen no promotion for it anyway, so what the fuck is this movie?
Yeah. I'm sure there's probably some behind the scenes like production crap that they had to deal with.
Yeah.
I will say, just going into this prior, it already looks like a fair setup going for, oh god, the Minecraft movie. Like that was a long list of like, oh, that looks interesting, that looks like it's gonna be cool, I've been interested in this one. The Minecraft movie, crap.
He is Steve.
Okay, I want to go ahead and just talk about my feelings on the Minecraft movie now, just so I get that out of the way, because I'm sure I'm gonna try not to ramble too bad about it.
Before we go too deep into it, have
What's
you
that?
seen the newest before we go too deep into it, have you seen the newest trailer?
Yes.
Okay, the one that shows him as a child saying, as a child, he yearned for the mines?
I wanted to tear my ribs out of my chest.
Okay, because I got that in the theater when I saw Moana 2 last week, and I was like, oh my god.
The meme is dead. The meme is dead. Like, it's officially dead.
Anyways, go ahead with your rant.
Okay, so it's not even necessarily a rant. It's me stating that I have extremely complicated feelings on this one. It's equal parts schadenfreude and tentative hope. I don't know how I want this movie to be received. I can't decide on whether I want it to actually be a smash hit that actually is surprisingly good despite everything currently going for it, or if I want it to crash and burn in the most hilarious way possible. Because the thing is, so much weird stuff has been leading into it, from the visuals to the casting to Jason Momoa dressed up as like a tween girl. I still don't really know what's up with that. Didn't really get any answers there, but there's so much of that leading into it that I feel like it might somehow come back around into being like, not necessarily a cult classic kind of thing, but just being so not giving a shit that it actually kind of is good, you know, where it just doesn't really seem to care about one thing or the other. It just ends up being kind of genuine with whatever story it brings on display, and that's all it needs. But I know in my heart of hearts that can't be what happens. That can't be. It looks like crap in a way that other movies have looked worse, I'm for sure. But comparing it to the simplicity that is Minecraft, and just recognizing how much of a monster the concept and the IP of Minecraft has become in the years since its release, it just it wants to. I want to hate it, but it seems so wrong to hate it as much as I do. It feels like it should be an underdog, and yet it's got so much going for it as far as money goes. So I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to feel here.
I hope it crashes and burns just because it looks god-awful.
Fair.
And as far as why Jason Momoa looks like that, I think that they kind of allude to that in the most recent trailer, because he mentions he's like a kid of the 80s that at one time had a bunch of arcade high scores, and he was like an elite gamer or something. So I think he's supposed to be like stuck in the neon past. But
Fair. I could see that.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
It does.
I'll see it. It looks terrible.
I don't know how I want it to feel, because like part of me was like, yeah, I want to see it crash and burn because I want to see Microsoft take such a huge fucking hit with how much they've tried. I'm sure they've tried to pour into this garbage. But on the other hand, I also do love the original game, and I hope there is at least a modicum of heart in this in a way that isn't just cringe as all hell. Like,
The
I don't know.
reason that I know that that's not the case is because the community and Minecraft modders were not involved in the movie. Notch was.
Ah, fair.
So that's my.
That's actually, that is about the firmest nail in the coffin as it could be. All right, fair. That's, oh boy. That's, yeah, let's see where this goes.
Well, moving on from one beloved IP to another, did you know that Mickey Mouse exited public domain? At least his original design did.
His original,
So
yeah, his original like Steamboat Willie like appearance, I believe. Yeah.
yes, which technically is a specific design that I think 5 shorts technically entered the public domain.
Hmm.
People have been calling it Steamboat Willie because that was the first one, but there were other shorts that came out that year with that Mickey Mouse design. So
Yes.
for some reason, like Barn Crazy and things like that. However, for some reason, people have taken that to mean that you can't use Mickey Mouse at all. You have to use a character called Steamboat Willie, who is a steamboat captain, which is stupid. However, we are now getting Screamboat, the Mickey Mouse slasher movie, at the end of January, because that's the logical step that you take.
Oh yeah, I remember Blood and Honey being a thing.
Of course, we just got a sequel to that
Right.
a couple months ago. But yeah, apparently Mickey Mouse takes a steamboat to New York and starts killing people.
You know what? Fair. Whatever.
Most of these things I hate, but the fact that it's Mickey Mouse and Disney has just pissed me off so much the past decade, I don't care. You know what? Have fun. Do whatever you want with the mouse.
All right.
Rip him to
Yeah.
pieces.
Yeah, go for it. Fuck it. Why not? I wish I just saw him on more advertising material. That'd be funny to see.
Yeah.
I still want
Why
there to be.
not?
I want there to be. This is a complete tangent. I'll not stay on it long. And I've seen someone else bring this up before. I want there to be a fighting game using nothing but public domain characters. I want to see Steamboat Willie fight Jay Gatsby.
That could be, yeah. I'd pay to see it.
Sure.
I guess I'd pay to play it, is what I would really say.
But kind of continuing along the line, and I'll bring up like one or two that have at least caught my attention on this list. First and foremost,
Sure.
the first one that pops up on the list, the new Superman movie's coming out.
That trailer doesn't look awful.
It doesn't look awful. It looks straightforward. It looks like how I remember Superman actually being.
Yes, I'm very curious.
Yeah, I think giving it to James Gunn is actually a pretty good call. I think they'll do a bit of the silliness that came with like the original comics and the original movies and everything. I'll still never forgive the existence of Man of Steel, and I'll never forgive all the fucking fanboys who go on and on about how it's actually a good movie, because it's not. It's objectively bad. It looks... If it were anything other than Superman, it might have been fine. But it's Superman, so it's crap.
Yeah.
So I'm actually kind of excited for this remake, because I adore the original Christopher Reeve Superman movie. That one was that's a classic for me. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Hackman is great in those movies.
Right? It's wild. I'm curious to see how Nicholas Holt's going to be as Luthor. Like, I don't see him as a Luthor, but then again, I think I'm biased towards Clancy Brown from the original animated series.
Right.
So
well,
I think it's just me.
He can't do any worse than Jesse Eisenberg did.
Oh, that's such a low bar.
Surely he'll be better. Here's the thing. Everything that I've seen Nicholas Hoult in recently, that being like The Menu and Nosferatu just recently, and even Renfield to an extent, that's a bad movie, but I didn't.
He's a fine
hate
actor.
him in it. I think he's perfectly fine. I just hope he does not become, because Hollywood goes through these cycles where it reuses the same 5 people in everything, and I really hope we don't get Hoult oversaturation.
Yeah. I'd like to be able to see him actually kind of stretch his chops a little. It feels like all the stuff I've seen him in, he hasn't really had that big of a screen presence. And Luthor's whole thing is screen presence in one regard or another. You know, it's either through his cold, calculating nature, or when he does actually kind of go a bit to the crazier side of things, which he does often, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just has to be done well. And so,
you know what?
Yeah.
That's a good point. I haven't seen Nicholas Hoult in anything where he portrays someone that has an overabundance of confidence or is sort of carrying that. He's always sort of whimpering and is under the heel of another character in everything that I've seen him in. Even The Menu to an extent, because he's like a fanboy for this Ralph Fiennes chef. Right.
And like, meanwhile, Luthor has to be able to share the screen with Superman and often outshine him. So,
yeah, very curious.
So yeah, I'm
Um,
curious to see where that goes. I'll still say I think one of the better portrayals of live action Luthor was, of all things, Smallville. I think that back and forth quality CW show, I think that's got one of the best Luthors ever put to screen, quite honestly. Um, but again, that's me
all
just being
right.
biased.
Um, to go off something else from here, sort of like a back and forth nature here, I'll
Hmm.
take the reins and just ask, how are you feeling about the upcoming animated Witcher movie?
I almost forgot that that was a thing, but I mean, sure.
Well,
I
it's
don't.
going direct to streaming, so you'd be forgiven for
Right, yeah.
not really thinking about it.
I saw part of the kind of anime style Netflix thing they had, like kind of in the vein of like the Castlevania series that they did, which I loved the Castlevania series, incidentally. I tried to start doing the animated Witcher one, which I think is meant to be a prequel, but it just didn't grab me, so I just didn't continue with it. Um, I think it's also because they portrayed a Leshen very differently than I've ever seen. I was like, what are we doing here already? Um, and again, that is such a pedantic fucking thing for me, but still, I didn't really care either way for that. So I don't really know how I feel about there being this Witcher series. I believe the public at large has kind of now soured towards the concept of more Witcher after the collapse that was the popularity of the live action series. Um, just for who knows how many reasons. So I don't know really how well that's going to come across and how well it'll be received in general. So who knows?
Mm, okay. I just wanted your thoughts on it. I'm not a big Witcher guy. I own some of the games, but I've literally never touched them. So I knew you were the person to ask.
Yeah, I like it well enough. I need to get back into reading the books. Just there's so many of them. And I love that sort of thing, like that worlds that kind of drip with that kind of lore and also kind of take a slightly different angle towards fantasy. Um, not necessarily the kind of romanticized version of it, like the idea of the Witcher being like a professional rather than any sort of like chivalric hero, despite him often doing chivalric hero things, but that's kind of the point. Um, so I don't know. I, I
Mm.
I probably won't see it just because like I don't really know how to feel one way or the other. So who knows? uh, let's see, to kind of piggyback off that. This list on IMDb just seems to be the ones with the biggest profile right now.
Sure.
Because the second one on the list after Superman is 28 years later, which is actually something I'm tentatively interested in.
I just got a trailer for that today, and it looks like it has some interesting cinematography.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, this is going off of a teaser trailer. There wasn't a lot that was actually revealed in it, so
No, no.
it's mostly cool shots set to this kind of haunting melody. It was weird. A lot of these trailers use songs like oh, it's like a dead Victorian child singing Nirvana. But
Right.
instead, the I don't know, it was like a British lady saying numbers and progressively getting more and more manic. I was like, "Oh my god, this is actually putting me on edge."
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah.
When did
I don't know.
28 Weeks Later come out?
There.
Actually,
I don't know. I don't know if there was there a 28 weeks later. I know there's a 28 months later.
there was a 28 weeks. I just don't remember when came out.
Oh.
28 Days was 2002. Weeks was 2007. So we could cover the three movies on our on our show.
Was it? Yeah. Was it only the three? I thought there was a 28 months later. I guess I'm wrong.
No, it's just that I mean there could have been a month show or book or something, but not a movie. So
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah. No, I'd be interested. I'm fairly interested in that one mainly because like I'm kind of interested in the angle they're taking, like seeing kind of the style of kind of like the walk. Basically, they're skipping to the end portion of The Walking Dead, where it's like, oh, we actually get to see how society has sort of survived at this point in the zombie apocalypse. Which,
mm-hmm.
you know, at this point, zombie apocalypse stuff is pretty tried out. But, I think there's still some potential left in it. So,
I am going to retain cautious optimism, especially because this one's going to be directed by Alex Garland, who has done some cool stuff in the past. He did Ex Machina, and I like that. But
oh yeah,
recently, woof, he did Men in 2022, which was god awful. In this past year, he did Civil War, which I did not see, but tons of people were like, "This movie is spineless."
yeah,
So we'll see what he
that's the
does.
general. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, like you said, tentative curiosity there. But I figured that was just worth bringing up, just since that seems like it's been a big one I've seen online a lot of just like it being talked about in general. Like, okay, yeah, let's get into this one, I guess.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I love talking about shows that we could cover on the podcast. So
so oh
or
god,
movies.
this is a very brief one,
Um,
but oh god, I forgot the fucking How to Train Your Dragon live action thing's coming out next year.
Surprisingly, the dragon like the animated dragons in that movie look better than anything Disney has ever done in live action. So
Oh, fair.
that's good enough.
But also at
But
the same time, they
yeah,
also
it's
looked great in the original animated film.
no, they did. I am not fighting that.
It's just God, I just don't see the point of this one.
There is something that I'm interested in. Neon is putting it out, but it's the monkey.
I don't know that one.
Based on the short story by Stephen King, which is like about a haunted symbol monkey doll. It's directed by Osgood Perkins, who's the son of Norman Bates himself, Anthony Perkins.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and named after his grandfather, who was Johnny Lovo in the Scarface, the original Scarface. But I am sort of interested in this movie because it's coming out in February. It has gotten no trailers, but I got a teaser trailer for it in the summer at the theater, and the teaser was literally just a symbol monkey sitting in a void clapping. And I was like, you know what? That's all you need to do to get my attention. You don't got to have jump scares and the camera whipping around. Just some eerie shit with no explanation, and then go to the next trailer. So I want to see this.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, that's bold way of going about it, though. That's I'll say that that'll catch your attention.
Definitely, yeah.
Um, Another one that I actually just recently saw a trailer for that I'm actually extremely interested in. It's another A24 piece, and you may have seen a trailer for this already. Who knows? Death of a Unicorn.
I literally, with my Nosferatu showing, I got the first trailer for that, and I was like, what? What are we doing here? Because I didn't realize it was like a horror. I mean, it's kind of a horror comedy, but the horror stuff didn't really settle in until like the last couple seconds of the trailer. And I don't know. It looks interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think it's leaning as much like kind of towards like dark comedy as much as horror. I think where just I don't know. I don't know. It kind of seems to branch a few genres, which seems to be the A24 style. But yeah, I think it just seems wacky enough, and just like with the concept of it alone, that yeah, no, I can see myself enjoying this a lot. I think it's gonna feel very dated. Like there's a whole thing of like the first shot is the girl like vaping and like in response to hitting their unicorn, and like one of the taglines like that they drop along it, like they have like coming soon. It's then such another word come on screen. It says poke around and find out. I was like, all right, they get that one, but no more. Like that's pushing it.
Cancer. That's the biggest one.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember from that trailer is what's his name, Connor Hennigan.
I believe so.
Cancer. That's the biggest one.
Yeah, I love that actor. I think he's hilarious.
Moving on.
That one I'm interested in.
Something I got on my list here. I'm still in February, by the way, but you're going through IMDb, so we're getting probably from both ends. I'll probably speed up as we get later in the year. But
sure.
The Day the Earth Blew Up, which is the Looney Tunes movie, finally got distribution in August or September. It got distribution through a little known company called Ketchup Entertainment that has barely done anything, but that means it is hitting theaters. Warner Brothers was so close to black holing this movie into non-existence, like they did with Coyote versus Acme and the Batgirl movie. They were just gonna pull the plug and be like, "Yep, this didn't exist, tax write-off." But by some miracle, we're actually getting a theatrical release. This is the first fully animated Looney Tunes movie to ever be released theatrically worldwide. I'm very excited to watch it. It's got the same animation team and director, Pete Braungart, who did the recent Looney Tunes cartoons on Max, which obviously they don't look the same as the old stuff, but it is probably the best thing that the Looney Tunes have done in decades. So I am very excited for this, and it's a Porky and Daffy comedy duo movie. There's no other tunes in it. Bugs Bunny's not farting around. It's just the two of them, like, saving the world. And I don't know. I'm excited for it. I've gotten the trailer a couple times. It has some nice Looney Tune style slapstick and gags. There's a part in the trailer where a fictionalized man in the audience stands up like they used to do in the old theatrical shorts. I'm like, this is all I want from the Looney Tunes. This is all I want them to do. So
Fair.
thank you. I'm very excited for that one.
This feels like the closest we'll ever come to the classic days of Duck Dodgers.
Yes. I'm so excited. The only downside, having watched the trailer, I don't think Bob Bergen is voicing Porky Pig. It might be Eric Bauza. And I said the same thing in our Space Jam episode. If you're not getting Bob Bergen to do Porky Pig, what the fuck are you thinking? He's like the only person that can do it well.
Yeah.
So, whatever. We'll see how that goes, though. Bob Bergen did it in the show, too. I don't know what their problem is.
I mean, he wasn't available. But I'll do 3 at once on this one, just because, I'm going to do kind of quick shots with it and just my general feelings on it. There are at least 3 Marvel movies coming out. My God, they are still trying. Captain America, Brave New World, Fantastic Four, First Steps, and the Thunderbolts. And I'm in the weird position of all 3 of these, for one reason or another, give me one reason or another to make me want to see them. I want to see Captain America Brave New World for the simple fact of the Captain America movies, in my mind, had always kind of been the best part of the MCU, with the semi-exception of Civil War. I think Winter Soldier is far and above their best, just straight up, like as far as just film quality, is just their single best one. And I think Brave New World is touching on stuff that kind of harkens back to that. I also think it'll be hilarious to see Harrison Ford as Red Hulk. I cannot imagine that being anything other than hilarious to see on screen. Interested in Fantastic Four for the simple fact of the aesthetic looks really fun, and this might finally be the chance to make an actually good Fantastic Four film. And even if it's not, it'll be hilarious to see them fail for the 3rd time.
I was gonna say, we've had 3 tries at theatrical Fantastic Fours. Well, the first one, the first one never happened because Roger Corman dropped the ball on it. But then those other 2 from the post 2000 yet, so
right, maybe
we'll finally break the curse.
And then Thunderbolts, only slightly so, because it's kind of the same vibe as Guardians of the Galaxy, just with it's basically Guardians of the Galaxy by way of Suicide Squad, which, all right, sure. Well, let's see if we can make this lightning strike, well, at all, actually. I don't know, as far as Suicide Squad went, they never really struck the first time, but...
I hope so, because that sentence you just said did not sell me on the Thunderbolts.
Fair. Honestly, fair. I think there's enough going for it that it could be good, but I'm not holding out hope on that one. So none of those are ones I will most likely see, but if I feel like I have the time and that, I think the Fantastic Four one's the one I'd most likely see, simply for the fact of it's probably the one film that requires the least amount of homework. It seems to be its own thing, kind of separate from most of the other stuff, and it seems to be what's trying to set up the remainder of this current phase, which has been going on for the better part of half a decade. So I don't know what the fuck they're trying anymore. So
may it finally crash and burn.
My God, may it please. So either way, it's either going to be okay, or I get to finally see the beginning of the end. But yeah, those are the 3 Marvel ones that I've at least seen on this list. And if there's a 4th one, won't even bother mentioning it.
I've actually made it down a fair ways into the list because you have taken so much pressure off of me going through the IMDb side of things.
Really?
The next thing, end of April, is when we're supposed to get that Until Dawn movie.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
No one reprising their roles from the game except for Peter Stormare, which is probably the right choice.
Yeah.
I like Peter Stormare. I don't know how this is going to turn out, though, because the game is theatrical, obviously, but it's also so heavily reliant on player choice.
Yeah, I think they're just going to end up just making...
translating.
They're just going to end up making a classic schlocky slasher film at this point. What's the point?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to see if Steph can make it here to see it. Yeah. That would be fun, at least.
That'd be fun to yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to turn out.
Ooh, there's another one on this list I forgot was coming out this year, but I'm excited for. Whenever you're done with yours,
I'm done with Until Dawn.
All right, cool. It's Mickey 17, the Robert Pattinson future clone kind of thing, which honestly looks very funny and also insane. So
that was a trippy trailer too.
They had
what was happening. So
they have been doing there have been some gangbuster trailers lately. I will say it feels like they've been doing a good job with trailers these days. But yeah, I mean, not a whole lot to be said about that one. It's probably just gonna be Robert Pattinson getting up to wacky hijinks, which is honestly the more I've learned to really enjoy.
Well, speaking of enjoyment, the Lilo and Stitch remake is coming out. It's gotten a couple of teasers so far. One of which I've gotten a few times in the theater of Stitch stomping around, smashing sandcastles.
We have so many
So
goddamn remakes coming out this year. My God.
I know, which that's at least could give us an excuse to talk about the original Lilo and Stitch on the show, which could be fun.
I mean, yeah,
So
fair.
I'm always thinking about that. And I mean, to round out May, like Karate Kid Legends was supposed to come out this past year. That's the one that blew our minds last year.
Oh
'Cause,
yeah.
like, Ralph Macchio from the original and Jackie Chan from the remake are
Like,
working together. So those movies are in the same universe. It's not a remake. It's just another story.
and now they're
very
now they're
confusing.
converging. It's like this is unprecedented.
It's very odd. Yeah,
My goodness gracious. So I don't know what the hell that's going to be like.
no clue. Very exciting though.
I will also
Anything
say,
else?
I will say the next line in the Knives Out series, Wake Up Dead Man, is at least slotted to come out next year. No trailers have been released for it yet, but I believe it's finished filming at this point. Either that or it's wrapping up. So I'm excited for that. I'm still mixed on how I feel about Glass Onion, but I think they did a lot of really funny shit with it. And I do think they break down the whodunit formula pretty well in both movies, and I think the third one, I'm sure, will find a brand new way of doing it.
I loved that first movie, seeing it in theaters, but the reception had turned so much on Glass Onion. I still have not seen it.
I think it's good. I think people built up the first one a bit too much. I think the second one is having a lot of fun. Like for just like as just like a little thing to look out for if slash whenever you do see it. One of the things it's doing throughout the movie is there's a big centerpiece on art, like famous art pieces and that sort of thing, and they have a fun time of recreating famous art pieces in like random scenes. Like basically, like someone will be in a pose. Like there are certain ones that are very obvious. Like they'll like be in a particular position, like it looks like they're recreating the Last Supper, or they're at one point someone is screaming, like in that one, the Scream, painting. I believe there's a Mona Lisa one near the end, and like the Mona Lisa is a very central piece itself in the film, like as an actual physical presence. And the fact that they're just doing that, and like it's one of those things. I've called it kind of the what's his name? The director of he did the director of Nope and Inside.
Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele. Like it kind of has this Jordan Peele quality of it's blatantly obvious imagery without it being overt. It's like if you're looking for it and you choose to notice it, you can see it and it makes you feel clever. That's kind of what it feels like. It's just like they're doing this kind of fun thing throughout it, and that's kind of what the whole movie feels like, where they're just actually ripping on a lot of tropes, and there's direct references to like big rich oligarchs, the biggest comparison being Elon Musk with the main villain character basically. And so I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it got worse rap than it deserved, because I think it's having a good time with what they're doing with it, and I don't think it did anything wrong. The mystery itself is blatantly obvious, but that's not really what they're trying to do. And hell, the mystery was obvious in the first one, so
Yeah. Well,
I'd say see it.
I'll give it a watch. Yeah, sure.
And plus, it's like it's poking fun at whenever it was in the middle of like COVID and quarantining and everything. It's a lot of fun to see.
All right, well, I just scrolled through the remaining films that are on this list, and I am just going to shotgun all of the sequels and potential reboots and remakes, and just tell me if you want to stop and talk about anything, because holy shit, July onward is just a dumping ground for this garbage.
Oh, God. All right, we'll go for it.
But yeah, Jurassic World Rebirth, apparently that Dominion was not the last one of those.
What the fuck?
We're still getting more of those. The Smurfs movie, which is a reboot of the animated live-action hybrid series. So
Hard pass.
That's restarting. The Naked Gun is getting a remake.
What the fuck?
Written by Seth MacFarlane.
Okay, nope. Hard no.
Freakier Friday. Believe it or not, this is not the millionth adaptation of Freaky Friday. It's actually a direct sequel to the Lindsay Lohan, Jamie Lee Curtis version from 2003.
That one I did know.
Overdue sequel.
Yep. So got another one of those down the pipe. Cool.
Yay, I love it. Hooray. A new Insidious movie is coming out, a new Conjuring movie is coming out, because we always get those. A new Saw movie, Saw 11,
Christ.
which again, they're finding more and more they
Kramer's been dead since the third movie.
yes, Tobin Bell has been dead in the series for a long time. They keep finding ways to bring him back via videotapes, or like Saw 10, which is an interquel between Saw 1 and 2, or yeah, Saw 1 and 2. So they I don't know if this is going to be a period piece or what. They are getting desperate. They killed him off way too soon.
Oh my God.
We're also September 26th. I am constantly talking about Universal Monsters and how we have now covered all of them except for The Mummy, because The Bride of Frankenstein and Creature of the Black Lagoon do not have remakes we can touch. That is no longer true. September 26th, we are getting The Bride.
Oh.
So we'll be able to touch on Bride of Frankenstein in the future, probably. It comes from Maggie Gyllenhaal as director.
Which, incidentally, there's actually a animated DC series going on right now it's basically the Suicide Squad again, but it's called the Creature Commandos, and it has the Bride of Frankenstein as one of the main characters. And for some reason, she's a gun-wielding badass now, which I was kind of surprised about.
I forgot I am familiar with the Creature Commandos, not the series. I have not seen the series. We're getting a new Tron movie following Tron Legacy called Tron Ares.
That's been a minute. Let's see how well that goes.
Yeah, the last one was 2010, so now how about 15 years later, we do another Tron.
I've been talking about doing a sequel about that since that last one came out. My God.
The Black Phone 2, Mortal Kombat 2, a new Predator movie called Predator Badlands.
Ooh.
Well, I thought that was going to be similar to the last Predator movie that was like, it takes place in a specific, what was it, Navajo? It was some sort of past.
Yeah. It was,
I didn't.
Yeah, it was called Prey. I mean, I really like that one. I think I still defend, as many people have said before, that any movie can be a Predator movie. You just have to drop the Predator into it. Barbie could have been a Predator movie if they dropped the Predator in it, and I think Barbie would have won.
Well, it seems like that's what Predator Badlands is, because it's like a futuristic wasteland where two sisters are finding themselves, and also the Predator is there. So,
all right, I dig it. Fuck it.
Seems like a similar vein.
I'm cool with it.
We're getting the Running Man remake, so look forward to a potential episode on that in the future.
It'll be interesting.
Yes. Now You See Me 3, because it has only been 10 years since that second movie came out.
Yeah, like, the second one wasn't even that good. Like, why are they doing it again?
We're getting Zootopia 2, which has been in the works for a while. We're getting the follow-up to Wicked. Wicked for Good. So that'll round out that movie, which I was actually thinking about it after the last episode we did with Hannah. Like, could we cover that as a They Remade It again? Actually, if we wanted, we could do the two Wicked movies as a proper They Remade It episode if we did it alongside Oz the Great and Powerful, because they're actually all prequel Wizard of Oz movies,
and they have to do with the origin. Yeah, and they have to do with the origins of the wizard, at least in part in Wicked. You know what?
So
I'd be down for that.
Interesting.
I'd be really down for that, actually.
So look forward to that. Probably that's like the Dune episode where we keep planning it and we never do it.
At least we know that there's just one more fucking Wicked movie. Like, they can't make another one. If they somehow split the second half of that play into two movies, I will find somebody.
Right. Although technically Dune Part 2 is the last one for our podcast episode. All the others are just adapting the other books that have never been adapted. So
fair.
We are good to do Dune now if we ever want to. We have the resources. And then the last one that I have on my list, I'll let you speak to anything else you might have, but the newest Avatar is coming out, Avatar Fire and Ash, because James Cameron has like 10 of these rattling around in his skull. So we'll see how that does. The last one made as much money as you could have hoped, so...
Yeah, well, whatever, honestly. Yeah, that's... Yeah, I mean, fair, I guess. It's a pretty solid list. I might actually do the same as you and rattle off a few on here and see if any catch your ear.
Okay, real quick, before I do that, this doesn't even have a wiki page, but December 5th, Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Oh, God.
Okay, that's the last thing. I just saw that and I was like, what the fuck? That first movie barely performed. I don't think it made any money.
Right.
Whatever. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Just a few random ones. One called The Gorge, which I saw a trailer for, and it looks fine. It seems like it's trying to come out on Valentine's Day. It's about these two snipers hanging out above a gorge that's filled with monsters, and they can only talk over great distance. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Miles Teller and Sigourney Weaver are in that, right?
yes.
I saw something on this the other day. I don't think I've seen a trailer for it, but I read something.
Looks, I mean,
Yeah,
it's an
I mean that
Apple,
certainly sounds interesting.
it's a straight to Apple TV thing. So it's pretty like, it's pretty small scale feeling, but looks fine. Um, Obviously, like you said, the next Avatar movie. Let's see, Dogman, like you mentioned earlier, the Tron Ares one, the Mortal Kombat. There's one called Novocaine, which just from the little blurb here, when the girl of his dreams is kidnapped, a man incapable of feeling physical pain turns his rare condition into an unexpected advantage in a fight to rescue her. I'm like, okay, that's hilarious. Um, I have
Okay,
no idea
cool.
anything else about that one. Let's see. Further down, there's going to be a remake of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Henry Danger, the movie. That's I never thought I'd see the words Henry Danger ever again. That's stupid.
What is Henry Danger?
It's an old. It's if I remember, it's either a bit show or just a show on Nickelodeon called Henry Danger. I believe it's a more modern
God.
one, but it doesn't look like it's going to be good. And I don't know why it's this high up on this list. So
Okay. Well, we just got the Ryan's World movie based on that YouTube kid that opens toys. That
oh god,
happened like 2 or 3 months ago, and it bombed.
oh
So
yeah, no shit. Um,
I believe it.
there's apparently going to be another Final Destination movie called Final Destination Bloodlines. No idea what that's gonna involve.
Those movies stopped being interesting the moment, like, okay, were they ever good? No, but they
No,
stopped being interesting the moment they stopped utilizing Tony Todd's death, which happened pretty early in the series. And now that Todd is dead, I know that they can never bring him back to do that unless they fucking reanimate his corpse, which so many movies are doing now.
right.
So
Which, funnily enough,
I have no
actually,
interest.
to that note, random tangent, a game I played recently, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, it has Tony Todd in it as a pretty major character, and it's really weird seeing him in it because he obviously did it before his death and everything. But yeah,
That's awesome.
it's actually really cool. He's actually a really cool character in it. I recommend the game, honestly. It might not be your bag, but it's got a lot of collectathon stuff, so it's a good amount of time spent.
Well, I've seen tons of clips of like the puzzle solving in that game, and that's where I really shine. So yeah.
Oh yeah, the puzzles are like they're just interesting enough to be kind of worth the time. Like they're a bit past kind of Uncharted stuff, but they're never too complex, which is nice.
Which is nice because I want something a bit more challenging because the Uncharted puzzles were never challenging to me.
I will say they probably aren't going to
that
be
game's
that
focused more on shooting.
right. Yeah, I will say they weren't that challenging, but they were at least they're better than better than Uncharted. Low bar, but better. Yeah, sorry, random tangent. Final Destination Bloodlines. There's one called Return to Silent Hill.
What?
Wait a minute. Is this? Dear God, it
That's
looks
not
like it's a
real.
movie rendition of Silent Hill 2. When a mysterious letter calls him back to Silent Hill in search of his lost love, James finds a once recognizable town and encounters terrifying figures both familiar and new. It's just Silent Hill 2.
That's gonna be bad.
That's gonna be bad.
There's no way that can be good.
Um,
Silent Hill 2 is like perfect. That's gonna suck. Okay,
that's
well,
awful,
I'll watch
yeah.
it.
and that's supposedly coming out, but yeah. There's one called The Amateur, which I've seen a trailer of. It's got Rami Malek as the main lead, where it's a CIA.
Oh yeah, he's like he builds this software and he's like a facial recognition thing, and now he's going around the world killing all these people. But
That killed like his like wife or something like that. He's like meant to be just like this complete nobody, but uses all of his tech to kind of even the odds. So that one,
that does look kind of cool. Lawrence Fishburne's in it, I think.
yep, yeah, that one actually looks kind of fun. They're gonna do a sequel to The Accountant of all things.
Boo.
That one goes like whatever. Who gives a crap? One that I'm sure is going to be just kind of bad, but I kind of like it just because of the cast. It's called Love Hurts. It's got Ke Kwan as the main lead, and he's basically pulling a John Wick. He's playing this action character guy as the main lead rather than in supporting and Everything Everywhere.
I forgot I got that trailer. I got that trailer and it looked pretty cool. I forgot. I was actually telling my mother about that because we went to California. We went to the Motion Picture Museum and they have an entire room where they just everyone that has like won an Oscar, their speeches are on loop. And his came up and she hadn't seen it before. And I was like, yeah, he's doing really great now. And he signed on for like a solo picture. And yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, that one actually looks pretty fun. So I'll be looking out for that one. Yeah, Beyond that, oh, good lord. Well, I think this might be the last one I picked just because it looks silly, and there's nothing else really coming up on this list that's worth mentioning. There is, in the vein of the screenboat thing, there's Popeye the Slayer Man.
No.
What? Yeah. Oh my god! I have to read this blurb to you. A curious group of friends sneak into an abandoned spinach canning factory to investigate the legend of the Sailor Man, who is said to haunt the factory and local docks.
That's dumb.
That's so dumb. That's next level dumb.
That is worse. That is a worse idea than Blood and Honey. I
Like,
saw Blood and
how?
Honey.
How did they get worse?
Oh my god. And I haven't even touched on You're a Mean One because I haven't seen it, but they did it to the Grinch too. Everyone gets theirs.
See, I could
Their
see the
horror
Grinch more than
film.
I could see the Grinch more than anyone else. Like, that feels like the one that makes the most sense of what if the Grinch's heart didn't grow 3 sizes that day? What if he just lost it?
Maybe, but these people are so fucking lazy. Maybe if it was a slasher movie taking place in Whoville, but no, it's just a bunch of fucking teenagers that do something and invoke the Grinch. It's always the same fucking thing.
What the hell?
No creativity whatsoever.
I don't know why, but I blame the Slender Man stuff for this. This feels like it was brought on by that whole thing.
I'm perfectly fine blaming Slender Man and creepypastas at large.
Yeah. My God. But yeah, that's the last I'll say of those because the rest of them are just so unrecognizable for either IPs or just things I wouldn't even seem interesting in to mention. But that was the last one. I was like, I have to read this blurb for the purpose of this
discussion on the show.
Right? Yes, but that blurb, I was like, I can't believe what I'm reading here.
Well, I guess it's time we sort of bring the mood down a little on the podcast as we, in our final segment of the show, discuss the people we have lost in 2024.
Of course. I'll keep my party poppers away from this one.
As usual, this list is a little all over the place, and it is mostly focused on people in the Hollywood entertainment industry. I don't really touch on like singers or musicians or artists. Like I said, I'm a little all over the place, so that's not entirely true. But also, as usual, Stu, you know some people that have died this year in entertainment industry. So if you ever want to interrupt me with like a thought on someone, maybe I have them on the list later, maybe I don't. Doesn't matter. Feel free to do so.
Sure.
Open discussion.
Yeah, I'll let you lead the charge. That's what you definitely have a more exhaustive both list and memory than me with writing this. So
sure. Well, as usual, I like to start it off. Well, morbid. I like to start off the conversation with folks related to the podcast that have died, and this is the largest list that we have ever had.
Good lord.
For people that have died that have been participate. They've been relevant to the show in one way or another.
To be fair, the longer we go, the more we have to work with. So
that is also true, unfortunately. But starting off, David Emge, who was an actor. He did a ton of bit parts in things on TV. Shows like Barney Miller, he had a stint on. He was in Basket Case 2. For the purposes of the show, he played Flyboy, which was a character in 1978's Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
Paul Maslansky was mainly a producer, best known for his work and cameo appearances in the Police Academy franchise, but he was the producer behind Return to Oz from 1985.
Don't really have a whole lot to say on that one, to be fair.
That's perfectly fine. Mojo Nixon was a musician, mostly known for Psychobilly Rock. The main reason I bring him up is because he played Toad in 1993's Super Mario Bros.
Oh my god.
Which we touched on last year. Sorry, I'm laughing. Charles Deercop was in a couple of features, things like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting, which if you can have those on your resume, you're pretty well off.
Yeah, no kidding.
But the second ever movie he was in was as one of the pool hoods in Paul Newman's The Hustler.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
I think that was a pretty early appearance. That movie had a pretty early appearance of a favorite of mine, which of course now I can't remember his name. He was in Little Shop of Horrors as Mushnik, but yeah, lots of folks popping up in that one. Vincent Gardenia, yeah, of course, Vincent Gardenia. Big one, huge one. Emmett Walsh was in a million things.
Mm-hmm.
We covered him extremely early on in the podcast because he was in Blade Runner. But then just here recently on the show, not this year, but here recently, he was also in the Baz Luhrmann Romeo plus Juliet. He was the apothecary that consulted with the duo. So,
Ew. But of course.
yeah. Large feature. I just saw him recently this month. I watched Christmas with the Cranks for the first time.
Oh,
The Tim
God.
Allen, Jamie Lee Curtis Christmas movie. And he's like the neighbor that plots with Dan Aykroyd to, yeah. So, wasn't always in great things, but he did a ton of stuff. So,
When you do enough at a certain point, you're going to be in some schlock.
yeah, it's gonna happen. Roy Boyd, not a lot to touch on. He mostly did minor roles in TV and theater. He was in both of the original The Wicker Man and he was in the original The Omen. So
Oh,
two horror staples.
damn. Good on him.
Yeah. Bernard Hill also did a ton, but I just had to write down Theoden from the Lord of the Rings series. Theoden
Yep.
King.
Yep, that was a big one for me.
Yes, I can't remember if he died before or after we did that episode, but I'm
I
sure.
believe it was like right after, if I remember.
It might have been. Wouldn't be the first time that happened. Last Man Standing. I'm looking at you.
Oh God, yeah.
Bernard Hill. Oh wait, I just did Bernard Hill.
Next guy.
What I meant to say was Dabney Coleman, who was in many a feature like Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. He was in Tootsie. You've Got Mail. He was the voice of the principal character on Recess for that show's entire run, and he was in the movie. I'm pretty sure. But we saw him in War Games last year.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm sorry. For a second, I was like, which one was he? Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what officer he was, but he was one of the secret intelligence guys.
Yeah, I remember him, I think.
Albert S. Ruddy, huge producer at Paramount Pictures. He produced the Godfather and Godfather Part 2 and won. He had those Oscars, and I mainly bring him up because I saw his Oscar when I was at the Paramount Studios. Apparently, he used it as a doorstop for many years.
I mean, honestly, fair. I feel like once you get that good, you get to say, all you got to say is, I produced the Godfather and Godfather Part 2, and you're fine. Like,
yeah.
like then you just start rubbing your fingers together, like,
Tony Merdente mostly was a stage and theater performer. He was married to Cheetah Rivera, who also died this year. So they died very close to one another, but they weren't currently married. They just had been married for a time. But he played the character of Action, who was one of the Jets in the original West Side Story. Best Picture winner, West Side Story. Another huge one when this happened, Donald Sutherland.
Oh, yeah. That one sucked.
Ordinary People, JFK. He was President Snow in the Hunger Games franchise. Pertinent to our podcast, he was in the remake of The Italian Job in 2003. Robert Banas, mostly a Hollywood dancer who appeared in many a musical production like Mary Poppins, Bye Bye Birdie, and, of course, West Side Story. So he was also in that picture. Excuse me. Charles Cyphers, he played the sheriff in a number of the Halloween movies. The first two, Halloweens from John Carpenter, and he also reprised his role in Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends, one of the more recent Halloween movies.
I believe it was Ends, but I might be wrong.
John Aprea, who played young Salvatore Tessio in The Godfather Part 2. We also lost him. Angel Salazar, mostly a comedian and didn't do a lot of acting, but very notably, he played Chi-Chi in 1983 Scarface. From our first episode.
Oh, yeah. Jesus, how could I forget that one?
Yeah, so we lost him. We also lost Steve McQueen's son, Chad McQueen.
Oh, yeah, damn.
Who played Dutch in the Karate Kid franchise. The first two movies, he was in Cobra Kai, and he could have made an appearance post-death in the Karate Kid Legends that's coming out. We don't know. But
that's true.
He was more or less a staple of the franchise. Terry Garr in movies like Tootsie, The Conversation. We have seen her previously in Young Frankenstein. Jonathan Hayes worked in a number of movies with Roger Corman. Most notably for us, he played Seymour in the original version of Little Shop of Horrors, a role that Rick Moranis would eventually take on.
Oh yeah, crap. I've almost forgot.
Speaking of Roger Corman, he died. uh,
Yep. Yeah.
huge
Sure
B,
enough.
huge B movie director producer, gave tons of people their start, like Joe Dante, Jack Nicholson, Bruce Dern. Um, for the purpose of the podcast, he directed the original Little Shop of Horrors and he produced the original Death Race.
Oh yeah. So that one was just some good fun.
Some good fun about post-apocalyptic races and
Yes.
yes. Quincy Jones, famous record producer, film score composer. He produced the score to the original Italian Job movie, the one with Michael Caine.
Yep. He's a great. He was great. That one. Seeing that one genuinely pretty sucked.
Yeah, and like I just mentioned, he's the reason that I know that apparently Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor had a love affair. So
And good
rest
for
in
him.
peace, Quincy Jones.
You're a credit to us all.
Winding down here from the podcast list, we have Art Evans. He was in movies like Tough Turf, Tales from the Hood, a lot of more minor things. He appeared as the driver in the original version of The In-Laws with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. Alan Arkin, who we lost last year. David Weatherly, who played Barlaam Butterbur in the first Lord of the Rings movie, which I believe is one of the many Hobbits.
I believe so.
Yeah, just a minor appearance from a New Zealand-based actor. And finally, for our podcast, for relevance to the podcast, Olivia Hussey just died the other day. She had she was in tons of things. She had a minor role in Stephen King's It miniseries from the 90s. More prominently, she was Juliet in the Zeffirelli Romeo and Juliet from 1968.
Yeah, that one was surprising, actually.
Yeah. Also lost her. And that's everyone that I could find in relation to the podcast movies that we've covered on the show specifically. Do you have anyone you want to touch on before I go through the bigger list?
Well, I will say there was one notable that unless I completely blanked out, which I full well might have, and in which case you can cut this from the podcast, but did you mention James Earl Jones?
I didn't. We have not covered James Earl Jones on the podcast. He's later in my list, but we can talk about him now if you'd like.
We didn't do The Lion King. That was a whole joke about it. We're never going to do that one because I hated it so bad. My God, my brain made such a point about it for the podcast that it just related it to the podcast, and not in the sense of we will never do it, but in the sense of we did do it. So,
yes.
My God, that was no. I'm so sorry. That is if we had done the Lion King remake, we would have talked about James Earl Jones, which
Coming to America, which just got a sequel.
Also, yep, fair. Also that notable stage actor as well. Yes, I'm so sorry. My brain completely flipped on that one.
No, this is important. Of course, Lion King coming to America, voice of Darth Vader in many a property. I believe he actually signed rights of his vocal performance over to Disney and LucasArts so that they could continue to use it.
Well, fair enough, I guess.
Yeah. I don't really care for AI reproduction stuff and reanimating the dead. I just finally watched Alien Romulus and had a huge fit over that.
Oh, yeah.
There's some pretty tasteless versions of that in that movie. But if you sign over your likeness or your voice or something to a company, I can complain about it creatively, but it's not all that disrespectful, I guess, because you approved it. So,
to be fair, I'm sure Harrison Ford had to do it for the Indiana Jones game, which incidentally was not his voice, but who I believe it was. I'm not even going to try to remember it right now because that's not the point of what we're talking about right now. But whoever it was, very good.
Yes, but rest in peace, James Earl Jones.
Rest in peace, James Earl Jones. And then obviously, in that note, since we brought it up multiple times, I believe it was Tony Todd did die this year, correct?
Yeah, like a month or two ago, Tony Todd passed.
Yeah.
Which incidentally, obviously the Candyman series and the Final Destination series, but we did just see him in a stream from 2024.
Yeah, for as brief as he was in it.
Him and Tim Curry squeaking in at the end of the movie.
It's because they had to have him in there somehow. Which, incidentally, I found multiple sites giving notable actor deaths this year because I wanted to make sure I know who all was there. Not a single one has shown Tony Todd yet, unless he has a different common name that I'm missing. But it's what the hell?
No, that's his regular name. These sites are just trash, I guess.
Yeah, it's what the hell, man?
I do more research than fucking Guardian or Variety. I guess.
You mentioned Richard Simmons, but not Tony Todd. Which, incidentally, rest in peace, Richard Simmons.
He is the very last person on my list in the miscellaneous category.
Right.
Richard Simmons, exercise tape guru. Yes, he has passed. His Sweatin' to the Oldies
My God.
series carried many a person, I'm sure.
Otherwise, like as it is, there's not a ton that necessarily affected me as much this year, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie Smith probably being one of the biggest ones, just because it's Maggie
Of
Smith. She's
course.
incredible. Um, she,
Downton
of course,
Abbey, Harry Potter series for the people that are listening.
right, of course. But beyond that, not a whole lot that I could really say. I could say would affect me. Shelley Duvall, perhaps, but that's we've already mentioned. Um,
We haven't mentioned her yet. I'm
oh, I'm so
surprised.
sorry. Yeah, I'm surprised we
Well,
haven't actually done anything involving Shelley Duvall.
the only thing that we could, because she dipped out of Hollywood pretty early, she did a couple movies, Fairy Tale Theater, and then she sort of left Hollywood to do her own thing. So the only movie I think we really could do would be The Shining, because
Where's that TV
Stephen
movie?
King, Stephen King did the TV movie, and there was the Doctor Sleep that came out a couple years ago. So there's a couple options there for Shelley Duvall.
There.
The other thing besides Fairy Tale Theater, I think she'd be well known for would be the Robert Altman Popeye movie with Robin
Oh
Williams and
yeah,
Paul Dooley. She was Olive Oil.
yeah. I almost fully forgot about that one. For a split second there, my brain was trying to remember. Did Kissinger die this year? But no, that was late last year.
Very late last year. It was like
I just want another opportunity to say
the memo
rest in.
came.
I just want another opportunity to say rest in shit.
The memo came across my desk as we were recording or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, going back to one that we sort of previously touched in a way, Cheetah Rivera died this year. Mostly
Oh,
stage
yeah.
actress. She was married to someone we previously covered, but she was in Guys and Dolls, Bye Bye Birdie, and she toured as Anita in West Side Story. She did not play Anita in the movie, but she was in the Broadway run for quite a while. So
Yeah, that one was significant. I forgot about that one.
yeah, big to people familiar with the stage, Cheetah Rivera.
But beyond that,
Moving on.
like I said, better or worse, I can't really think of anyone major on my end, but I'm sure you have a much better list.
I have some more here that I'll just sort of continue to go through. But we lost David Soul. A couple things. He was in the original Salem's Lot adaptation, the TV show Here Comes the Brides. He was Hutch in the original Starsky and Hutch series. And
Okay.
I think he even makes a cameo in that Starsky and Hutch movie from the early aughts.
Gotcha.
Probably. Peter Crombie died. He was in a ton of things like Seven, Born on the 4th of July. He was in Natural Born Killers alongside his co-star Tom Sizemore, who died last year, so we touched on him. Joyce Randolph played Trixie on the Jackie Gleason show, The Honeymooners. And I bring that up mainly because she was the last living cast member of that show. So they are now all gone. The
Good lord.
Honeymooners cast is gone.
Which is wild to think about. Like an entire
Yeah, I
show's
think-
cast having died.
Well, I think Audrey Meadows passed fairly recently, and she was a holdout, but a lot of them we lost forever ago, just because of how old the show is.
True.
Reed Harrison, I bring up more so in relation to me. He was a longtime story editor and occasional episode writer for The Simpsons. He wrote the season 8 episode, or season 9 episode, one of the two, which is the X-File crossover, called The Springfield Files. He also was supervising producer for Matt Groening's Disenchantment, which was a recent, his more recent show on Netflix, which recently ended earlier this year or last year. I can't remember.
Let's see if it gets as many remakes, like reboots as Futurama.
Yeah, probably not. The fervor is not as strong for Disenchantment material.
Here.
Carl Weathers, we lost. He was
Oh, yeah. Shit.
Apollo Creed in the Rocky series. He was in Predator. He was Adam Sandler's mentor in Happy Gilmore. He was in a number of things. He had a very funny run on Arrested Development where he played a cartoonish version of himself that cons David Cross out of money by pretending to give him acting lessons. He was very funny in that show. Speaking of Arrested Development, Martin Mull passed, who had a brief run on Arrested Development as well as one of the many side characters. He was also in Mary Hartman. He had a brief role in Mr. Mom. He was in Clue. I believe he was Professor Plum in Clue. So,
Oh, yeah.
Martin Mull is gone. Yeah, Professor Plum or Colonel Mustard. He was one of the two. I can't remember.
Mustard had a
I'm gonna
mustache.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Professor Plum. It's been a minute since I've seen that movie.
I'm sure we'll get, plenty of corrections otherwise.
Yeah, people love to correct. Ann Whitfield passed. Annie Get Your Gun. She was in a ton of Perry Mason on television. She was Susan in White Christmas, which I recently saw in theaters, which is the main reason this stuck out to me.
Sure.
We have comedian Richard Lewis died earlier this year. He things like Anything But Love. One of the lesser Mel Brooks movies. He was the King in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh, of course.
And he had a very long stint on Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm. He was like Larry David's best friend on that show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that I remember.
Yeah. I need to catch up on that series now that it's over. There's like 2 seasons I haven't seen. Moving on, Lou Gossett Jr. died.
Yeah, it's fair.
He sort of got his bigger start alongside Sidney Poitier in A Raisin in the Sun. He was also in Toy Soldiers, which is a big movie for many of us of a certain age for our childhoods. His final role was from earlier this year, the John Krasinski movie If.
Oh, that thing.
Very upsetting. It was his last role. He's voicing an old teddy bear in the movie, and the movie is dedicated to him.
Oh,
I was like, oh no.
that's terrible.
Yeah. Oh, Benji Gregory was the son on Alf. That's pretty much the only thing he did. He kind of left Hollywood pretty quickly after that, and I think he was doing something else like architecture or lawyering or something like that. But as a big Alf head, I'd be remiss not to mention Benji Gregory.
Fair. Yeah, no, very fair.
O.J. Simpson died. He was an athlete, partial actor for things like the Naked Gun series and the Towering Inferno.
And nothing else.
He might have killed somebody. I don't know. Have you seen what Netflix is putting out?
My God, this guy's a character. That's still. Yeah, I should move on.
Yeah. Move on we shall to Susan Buckner, who was in a ton of variety television alongside the likes of Rowan and Martin, Bob Newhart, who we'll get to later, the Brady Kids. She played Patty in Grease.
Oh, yeah.
The movie Grease.
I was like, what? Oh, yeah, it's been a minute.
Shannon Doherty was in Heathers, Beverly Hills 90210. She was one of the main characters on the series Charmed, which my mother loved. It was constantly on in the house growing up, so
I remember that one.
I'm well familiar with Shannon Doherty. Sorry?
I remember that TV show. It doesn't stick out, but I knew it existed.
Right. I think most recently she was doing a lot of those animal abuse commercials that were set to the Sarah McLachlan music.
Oh, the classic.
Yeah. Bob Newhart. Do I really got to go into Bob Newhart?
I mean, it's Bob Newhart.
Television history, people, and he's gone now. So
yeah, that one's a big one.
Huge. Gina Rollins died. Things like Another Woman, Shadows. Another Woman, Shadows. She was in Gloria, which I believe she was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actress for Gloria. So she was in a ton. She's gone now. As we were speaking of Coming to America earlier with James Earl Jones, we also lost John Amos, who was in that movie.
Yeah, true.
He was also big on Good Times for as long as he lasted there. I believe he dies at like the end of the first season or the second season. They kill him off.
Well, and appropriate, I guess.
He was in Die Hard 2 as well.
Honestly, never seen any other Die Hard movies, believe it or not. Despite there being like 6 or something, yeah.
If I remember correctly, Die Hard 2 is exactly the same as the first movie, but it takes place in an airport terminal.
Oh.
I think.
Huh. Yeah, I think. Maybe I'll try to find it. Maybe I'll try to see that.
Chris Christopherson we lost, singer-songwriter. He was in a remake of A Star Is Born alongside Barbra Streisand in the 70s. He at the height of his fame, he was offered a role in a little movie called Sorcerer in 1977, but he turned it down.
You know what? Fair. Could have been worse.
Yeah, well, we could have been talking Chris Christopherson earlier this year instead of Roy Scheider.
Oh, yeah. And yet, here we are.
Ken Page we lost. Huge in the theater community for many a stage performance. To most of our audience, probably best remembered as the voice of Oogie Boogie in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Damn. One of my favorite characters in that film.
Yeah, well, he's gone. Uh, so long, Mr. Page. Michael Cole, also a bit minor for TV. I'm nearing the end of the list, by the way.
Gotcha.
Like I said, I did a lot of research this time around, but Michael Cole passed. He did stints on things like the Mod Squad, Chips, the original Wonder Woman series. So, he mostly a TV guy, but he's gone. He was so all over the place I could not include him. And then the last actor I have before I get into a couple of miscellaneouses, Linda Lavin just died. Like, literally just died, like, yesterday or the day before.
Damn.
Things like she was in things like Gypsy, The Diary of Anne Frank, tons of movies and movie musicals, especially. Her biggest breakthrough was as the titular character in the TV show Alice, in which she was a diner waitress. Alice, the show based off the Scorsese movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. So
Didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, she had a very prosperous career.
No kidding.
And now we already touched on a couple of the miscellaneouses, and I removed them from my list, so I only have 4 left to go through here. Artist Akira Toriyama.
Oh yeah. Damn.
Creator of Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball as a series, and the primary art director for Dragon Quest.
Yep.
He died very early on this year.
That was a big one.
Yeah, I was concurrent with Dragon Ball Super as a manga, and it was a little odd and kind of funny, just because a few months after he died, it just sort of ends, and it has a weird wrap up, and I'm like, were these things that he had in his drawer in case he died? Was this just rushed together by his production team because he died?
I believe
they end the arc for sure, but it also just feels really rushed. So
I believe it was said after his passing that he had officially handed off full control to another person, a woman, as part of the production team, and apparently he handed off full control only a few weeks before he died. So I believe that's the case. So there still was at least a single head behind it. But I don't know. I don't know the details of it, because for as much as significance as I know about the man, as much as I know about Dragon Ball, at least the animated series, don't really know a whole lot of the details going into it. I just kind of know the story, and I certainly don't know anything about Super.
yeah, I there's some blind spots as far as some of the movies and some of the series go. I've only seen like half of Dragon Ball GT, which is the age regression one, and there's the recent one Daima, which I have not seen. But I read all of the manga, the original series, Dragon Ball Z, up into Super, so I'm at least familiar with most of the major beats of it, and I was a big fan. So it's upsetting, for sure.
Yeah. What a man.
Yep. Speaking of what a man, this death comes very quickly into the show because it just happened yesterday. But former President Jimmy Carter, dead at 100.
Yeah, no shit.
The man,
What a legend.
the man made it to 100. Unbelievable.
Yeah, like I've seen some of the final images that came out of him. The man was a raisin.
Fair, yeah. He was not doing as many for Humanity things as he used to do. But it's so strange because we had so many presidents with us for the longest time, and then they all just kind of died in the past couple years, and now it's just like, well, we know what the main problem with this is the fact that people are older and older taking office.
Right.
And it's just Clinton, Baby Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. It's just those 5.
Which is wild. Like, it's just all the most recent ones.
Yeah.
That's weird to think about. They really did all kind of croak only in the last decade.
Yeah.
Which, some of them I won't miss, but
Yeah, I guess Nixon died in the late 90s, and Reagan was gone before his presidency ended, but still.
Right. Man.
But that's enough politics talk. Let's talk about sex. Because
Kidoki.
Because Dr. Ruth died.
Oh, right. Okay, I was like, where the hell are you going, my man? Okay.
German sex therapist Dr. Ruth. It was a much often lauded joke of the 80s and early 90s that you could just call into a talk show and have an old German woman talk to you about your sex life.
Yeah, sure enough.
She held in for a while there. I don't know what her final age was when she passed, but she is officially gone. And the final obituary that I have is Peter Marshall, longtime game show host. He hosted the Hollywood Squares for a long ass time. And surely he took with him a ton of stories of working with the likes of Buddy Hackett and Paul Lynde and Shelley Winters, just all these people throughout the years as they shifted who was actually sitting in the squares. So Peter Marshall is now gone.
It's a lot of old guard that have kind of gone recently.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a morbid fascination that we have, but me and my mother, every time someone passes that we might know, we text each other and like send it to them. Just out of like curiosity and fascination, like I said, but it's been getting more and more frequently, and I've had to tell her, it's like, the older we both get, the more of these names we're going to recognize. That's just how it works. So,
yeah. The earliest one for me was Robin Williams, as I've said on here more than once, I'm sure. Of like that moment of like, oh, I know that person.
The earliest for me was probably Michael Jackson, but Robin Williams comes in as at a close second just because, as I've mentioned, I got jaw surgery the summer of 2014, right before I went to college. That's why I always remember Robin Williams died near the end of the summer of 2014, because I got jaw surgery right before college. I was out bedridden for a week, and the first thing that I remember is the news being on and the story running about Robin Williams dying.
Yeah. So, I remember him dying that year because in honor of that, we watched a couple of his movies. Most notably, right before going off to college, we watched Dead Poet Society, which is a very bad movie to watch before college.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the wrong call.
But did you make every day extraordinary, Stu?
Absolutely not. In no universe.
What are you talking about? I was locked up in my room watching fucking Daredevil.
Yeah, like, and that was usually the better days.
Oh man. Oh, but yeah, that's the end of the obituaries. This is where we sort of wind down the show. We talk a little bit about moving into 2025 and quote unquote resolutions, which I like to say because we don't really make resolutions. We just talk about self-improvement and where we're going to be. You know what? I am, just to kick us off, I am going to make a hard resolution of something I'm going to try to adhere to for the show in 2025.
Okay, let's go for it.
I am going to try to not use the word pacing at all.
Okay.
Because as I edit shows, I realize I use that word way too much, and more often than not, it's not the word that I mean to use. So if you're just listening to the show and you hear me say pacing, you're like, I think you know what that word means.
It's like, now that you mention it.
I do know what it means, but I have sort of perverted it in my head to be a catch-all, and I need to stop doing that. Not everything has bad pacing. Something can drag and still have good pacing. Something can be boring and the pacing is still fine. I just need to stop using that word. Yeah. So I'm going to try my very hardest.
The stream we watched recently had bad pacing. That objectively did have bad pacing. That was an example. Anytime, like, use that as your example. Anytime you want to use that word, think about the stream. If it's a case of bad pacing, is it like that? If the answer is no, then no. So that's honestly a good one. I'm going to try to do the same in using the word classic, because I use that in my opening stingers a lot, and I'm going to try to avoid that.
Beautiful.
Like, not everything needs to be related back to that sort of thing. So it gets kind of tired, and it means it kind of takes away from the whole film.
We're good.
Yeah,
we just had two solid resolutions.
Yeah. I think, like, at least for the show, I think if I had to do a generalized resolution for myself, I'm going to try to be more creative this year. I think, like I mentioned, I've kind of plateaued, at least on a personal level. I've gotten a lot of stuff done. There's a lot of achievements I can claim to have had this year. Again, job, fiance, met my nephew. But it just still feels weird. I don't really feel any better about myself for one reason or another. And so I think I just gotta engage with myself a bit better this next year, because I've kind of just left that to the wayside. So I'm going to try to get back into writing, try to get back into drawing, just even getting into reading and watching more movies, quite frankly. Not going to try to do the theater specifically unless there's stuff I genuinely want to see there, but it doesn't really seem like there's a lot. Not so far, at least.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few,
You
but yeah.
what would probably benefit you, and this is just a general thing and it doesn't apply to everyone, it obviously applies to me because I love it,
Mm,
but just try to figure out like what a good goal is and then shoot towards that goal insofar as like if you're talking movies, for example, like watching movies, it's like, okay, I don't like every Coen Brothers movie, but I would call myself a Coen Brothers fan. I should
mm,
look up their combined directorial filmography, find the things I have not seen, and just go through those slowly throughout 2025. It's a year, 52 weeks, 365 days. It's a decent goal to move towards, especially because you've already can cross a good number of those off your list and just sort
right.
of build from there. That's what I try to do with like the Criterion Challenge and the Best Picture Challenge, which I failed that one, but that's because it was so daunting. I had only seen like 6 going in, and there's like 90. So just as long as it's reasonable,
Mm.
and I don't know, maybe that'll help. But
Yeah, I
that's
think it
also
would.
something that I would do. And maybe it's more advice for me.
I mean, no, like I get you. I think I might try to implement that, if not for like specific either groups or directors or that sort of thing. I might try to do a thing of I'd like to at least try, even just to force myself to go to a movie theater once a month. Like, just find something that's showing is showing somewhere. I'll try to find maybe a smaller theater near me so I don't have to drive all the way out to Timbuktu. Um, and just see if they're doing like a re-release thing or if there's a film like with a smaller profile, just something. Because I've done also another personal one with myself. Is like once every paycheck, I'm going to try to get a new piece of clothing this year, just because a lot of my wardrobe is very not great anymore, and I just need to get new stuff. And I hate shopping. I hate doing clothes. So if I tell myself just get one per paycheck, I can divvy that out easily enough. That's enough. That's twice a month. So that's 24 pieces of clothing by the end of the year. That's doable, rather than just waiting until my crap gets to the point of non-usability and I have to buy like 4 things at once. So I'm going to try
Awesome.
to
A
have
metered
a
response. It's rational.
right. Exactly. I want to try to actually do that. I wanted to try to do a similar thing with the theater because I do genuinely love going to the movie theater. I just need to have the motivation to do it. And I need to find other ways of doing it because, like I said, all the major theaters near me are not that near me. They're kind of far out and they tend to be more expensive that way. So I got to find alternatives nearby if I can. So just got
That's
to make it
yeah.
happen. Even if I make it a solo thing, I got to try to go out. I got to try to leave the house just for myself, which I have a hard time doing.
Yeah, I wish you had a good theater near you that would do, because that would probably motivate you to get out more. If it wasn't just blockbusters like the theater near me, it's like it's not
Well,
just the legacy stuff, but there's also like streaming things where it's like, oh, for a limited time, this Shutter thing is going to be streaming here first. They do the mystery movie night where you can see a movie a month early, but you don't know what the movie is until it starts. Like, there's so
right.
many cool things that my theater does. I wish
Yeah,
you had the opportunity to do any of that.
we have one that's near us that does occasional things, but they only have like 2 theaters in their building and they really barely do anything with it. They mainly just do the occasional re-release and then like some indie films. And so it's never really seemed like it's worth it. So I got to see if there's something that I'm just missing or there's just because your theater sounds like the greatest theater in the world, quite frankly. So I got
Well,
to
you'll probably see it in January because I don't
true.
think that Alamo is going to work out, unfortunately. But hey,
That's
it's a
fine.
decent theater still.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Um, but yeah, I gotta just find that. I just gotta like actually make an effort for myself to do creative things, enjoy creative things, and try to expand myself as a person rather than just have more achievements under my belt. Because I've achieved a lot this year, but I think I need more than that. So, plus also I got a fucking wedding to plan, so I need some things to do between that.
Exciting.
And it's very exciting and also terrifying. So, but yeah, that's my general feeling of this year. It's like I want to just kind of I want to get in better touch with myself as far as just creative stuff goes, just because I've let that kind of go by the wayside, focusing on my new job and just other parts of my life. And honestly, it feels like I've finally gotten into a stable enough place to be able to do that. Like I feel like my life's has a solid foundation for the first time in a very long time. Um, so I feel like I can do that without much issue. Yeah, but any generalized things for you? Sorry if I hogged that.
No, you're fine. I think the only thing I really need, because I don't think I need to make resolutions for the movie stuff anymore, because I've gotten into a good rhythm with what I'm seeing in the theaters and the Criterion thing and what we do. Now that we have the movie nights, that's really going to help. So I think I'm good with where I want to be as far as edification of cinema, to sound like an ass.
Right.
So
Fair.
as far as like life goes, I have the same resolution I had last year that I did not accomplish. It's the same thing of be more creative. I think I even had a resolution last year. It's like I need to just set more time aside to work on my game. And I never felt like I had time because work was always in the way. And when there wasn't work going on, I was trying to decompress with a movie or a game or something, or playing a game or something. And I really
Hmm.
need to get back into planning and fleshing that out. You know, a creative outlet, so to speak. So,
Well, hey, you've got
um,
a you've got a podcast co-host that's also been wanting to do some more writing. So if you ever needed me to start expounding on some possible concepts,
yeah, I
I'd love
mean,
to write for your game. Truly.
I may just need to tag up with you and let you take the reins on it, even possibly to get your writing out there, because it's like I have ideas in my head. If I just give you ideas and base level concepts and then you just run with them, maybe that'll help me. So
Honestly, yeah,
I
I'd
don't know.
love that, and that would actually give me some direction of like what to start writing. Because God knows it's a hard thing to pick on my own. It's like
Yeah,
if you have concepts to pick from, I will absolutely run with that.
sure thing. Yeah, and it's just a matter of making it work and fleshing out the details from there. But yeah, that's all my resolution is. It's pretty straightforward and simple because it's the same thing I've had for the past 2 years, but with a little pressure from myself and some force of will, maybe I can
Right.
make it happen.
Gotcha. Well, red. Then yeah, let's have some teamwork on that one then.
Yes,
Uh,
do my best. uh,
yeah,
but yeah,
I think I'm satisfied with what I want to do this next year. It's it's weird being in a position because there have been other times at the end of end of year discussions where I felt I've come an extremely long way, and I feel like I'm kind of like on cloud nine, and all these different feelings, like you know, especially like when the Sonic movies were coming out of all things, like I felt like back in touch with myself. It's kind of those moments like you rediscover those things you liked as a kid, and you feel happier with yourself as a result. The Sonic movies kind of helped direct a bit of that for me. And it's weird now kind of being in the opposite camp of I now feel like I've done a lot. I feel like I've done the adult things. I have a boring adult job with good benefits and that's really stable and upward mobility. I'm going to get married here soon. I have a baby nephew that I get to hang out with now. I feel the most adult I ever have, and with that makes it feel strangely dull, which is fine. It means that I'm in a good place personally, but I need to kind of reignite some of the passion in things. And I think this next year is kind of going to be a good position to do that. It's a very strange position I found myself in.
yeah, I'm fully on board there. Well, I 2025 is going to be a good year because we're going to make it a good year. That doesn't mean that good things are going to happen all the time. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that the country or the world as a whole is going to go our way.
Right,
But
God.
it's just that you can't live as an extension through the extension of your surroundings. You have to live as yourself. So that's what
Mhm.
I really need to focus on and make 2025 the best it can be.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about, this is the furthest I will get into the socioeconomic environment. There's something to be said of periods of history that have had a certain amount of, let's say, strain going on them, and what that means for artistic endeavors and just the creative side of the world in general. And I think that's kind of helped to spur me into a point of action of, yeah, the world isn't in a great spot in a lot of ways, and there's ways I really wish things were different, but that also makes me want to make it better, or at least make sure there's more good things in it. And so I think that's a good mentality, at least for myself, to have of do some good things, just because the world kind of needs a few. And if not that, for the world, at least for myself. So I'm going to make it good, as you've said. And you are also going to make it good. And I hope all the people out there listening have the desire and hope to make it good. At the very least, if you have the hope to make it bad, I hope you fall and break your nose.
Yeah, hey, you made it bad. Congratulations.
Yeah, you made it bad for
So
yourself.
we're only wishing goodwill towards all of you because even if you want bad things to happen, then that goodwill will manifest as bad things and you'll get your way.
Yay.
Not confusing at all.
Yeah.
So,
Double negatives or something.
oh, I don't have much of anything else. This is usually where the podcast fades into obscurity as the fireplace comes in and
We kind of
we're
get to
taken out.
have our little relaxing thing. We don't quite have our little Looney Tunes yet. Moments. It's a bit more free flow. But yeah, I'm happy with this year, and I'm glad it wasn't as exciting as it could have been. Some certain things happened that weren't great, and they made it exciting in a way. But at the same time, I'm glad for the stability. I genuinely hope next year has some bright spots, because I've had some anxieties, but I'm going to do my best to make some bright spots.
Beautiful. I wish the best towards you and everyone out there for a good 2025.
Hey, early on in the year, I get to come see you, and we get to go see Steph.
The trio's back together again.
We're going on a trip. Let's do this shit. Oh God, I gotta fly in January. Well, that's something to sort of look forward to, I guess. We wish you all a happy new year. We hope your holidays were safe and well. And we'll see you in a few weeks' time after we have a nice, well-deserved break.
So long.